morning, and welcome to episode 20 of Tomorrow's World Audit Time. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Ross. The big 2-0.
Oh, yes, yeah. Put the TW into 20.
Oh, how exciting. It doesn't feel like that long ago we were doing episode 19.
It doesn't, does it, really? Apologies, listeners. You might be able to hear that much like the pervert in the Shetland pony farm, I've been feeling a little hoarse. Yeah, I woke up day before, with a bit of a frog in my throat. I'm not sure why, but hopefully it's not too annoying and I don't blow out your subwoofers with my Barry White-esque tones. Is it coming through okay, Mark?
Yeah, it is, though, I don't know, the combination of your slightly hoarse voice and those puns make it now feel like we're doing daytime radio. Which, that has me unsettled. Does that make me the zoo? Woohoo!
Yeah, so...
Give me some of them factoids.
Because it is a multiple of 5, as usual, we're doing something a little bit different, giving ourselves a little treat of an episode. And what bigger treat could there possibly be, Mark, than the double whammy of two of our favourite things? Michael Rodd, a full solid rod of half an hour, and my favourite country, the Netherlands, or as it's called here, Holland. This is a Holland special presented by Michael Rodd. What could be better, Mark?
For our 20th episode, Russell, surely nothing. It is perfect. If we denied people listening to this any longer, they would have been right. They wouldn't have known this episode exists, and yet still they'd feel the need to riot in the street.
Yeah, so it comes from the 7th of February 1973. I think I've mentioned before, there was a trend in the 70s era for them to do special reports from different countries. And so we get to see what the Netherlands looked like in 1973. And I was quite pleased to see that it looks just as bleak as Britain looked in 1973, doesn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it's absolutely miserable. There is barely any colour in it. So that means one of two things, which is that it really was as bleak as Britain. Or Britain just was the only country in the world to have invented bleak film stock. Oh, it's so great. It's unbelievable. Yeah. To be fair, I think that's partly because I'm assuming they're filming it in January, February time.
Yeah,
it takes a while to do these episodes. So yeah, it also cause it looks cold.
It does, doesn't it?
It looks so cold. And the people are barely smiling. And unless they're bullying robots, they are barely smiling people.
It does give Rod the opportunity to wear some lovely knitwear, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Fab.
The Netherlands, Mark. Would you like to know some Netherlands facts?
I would. I'd love to know if the Netherlands went to grammar school, Russ. So I'm really excited to find out.
Well, actually, first of all, shall we address the fact that this quite clearly states that it's from Holland.
From Holland, yeah. And he mentions Holland, yeah. Begs the question, doesn't it? Yeah, go on.
As I think,
when did we stop calling it Holland and start calling it Netherlands? Because I was thinking, because obviously it happened. It is now the Netherlands, Netherlands, and we all know that. And it feels a bit weird to call it Holland, or when people say Holland, it always makes people sound old and willful. Unlike you, I was thinking back to football, like Euro '88, which is the famous kind of Ruud Gullit victory. That was clearly Holland, and yet World Cup '98, when Dennis Bergkamp was scoring that amazing goal, that was Netherlands. And I feel like, actually it was probably the Netherlands, but I feel like in that 10-year period, in the kind of the late 80s through to the 90s, maybe into the 80s, it was just agreed it's now Netherlands. And I'd love to know how and why.
I mean, the interesting thing here, Mark, is that it seems like the actual Dutch government themselves don't care. It's one of those things where it's a typically Dutch response to something. It's something where, obviously in the UK, so there always used to be the case, and Americans still do it, where England and Britain
the Queen of England
are interchangeable, and it absolutely, really riles up the Scottish and the Welsh, quite rightly. I mean, doesn't, no surprise there. I mean, it's the same situation here. Holland is merely, North and South Holland are just provinces of a much larger country called the Netherlands. But it seemingly here, there's far less friction about the fact that it was only that region.
Are the people of Zealand not furious on a daily basis?
No, apparently not. And would you like to guess when the Dutch government officially decided that they were going to stop ever referring to the whole country as Holland? They actually had to change a load of stuff because all the time they were still just randomly calling some things Holland, some things Netherlands, with no real sort of standardised.
Even the Dutch government itself.
The Dutch government itself
hadn't settled. Yeah. Okay, because I was going to guess one of two things. I was going to say like either it's never, but you've just explained that they have, or it's like just before the pandemic or something like that.
Yep, you're absolutely right, Mark. It was January 2020 was when they actually decided, okay, we're going to stop calling it Holland now, apart from the bit that is Holland. The other thing is that obviously we call it the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's its official name. It's not at all. There's only 2 countries in the world called the, and that's the Gambia and the Bahamas. Netherlands is just, well, this is the other thing. There's no official anglicised version of their name. So to them, they are Nederland, and that's it. That's the only thing they've decided upon. So if you say, are you called the Netherlands or Netherlands? Or they go, we don't care. We're called Nederland. Call us whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Which is, sort of typically Dutch response. There's no standardised sort of way of calling it that. So, but in English, it is the only country to be called lands with an S. Not land, which is probably why we call it the Netherlands, because it sounds a bit weird saying Netherlands on its own. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, because I feel like in Britain we're very sort of keen to ensure that everything is correct, isn't it? Like sort of,
yes,
there's a correct way of saying everything and presenting everything.
Well, that's what I mean. I think when you hear somebody when you hear somebody use an old name, an archaic name, it often sounds willful and deliberate, because in general, most people like to use the correct name for something, because it's at the very least, it's respectful and polite.
Yeah. More Dutch facts. It is 16th most densely populated country in the world, and if you don't include all of the weird little places in Europe, it's the most densely populated country in Europe. 25% of it is below sea level, with 17% of it being reclaimed from the sea. And it is the world's second largest exporter of food and agricultural products, and the world's top exporter of flowers.
That's very nice.
Punching above its weight there in the old exports. This is interesting. Frisian cows?
Yes.
So they come from a place called Frisia, or Friesland, which used to be quite a large part of the Netherlands, but now is a much smaller part. But the people that live there, they're related to the Anglo-Saxons. So they're basically the Anglo-Saxons who didn't go over to Britain. And so the people of Friesland still speak a completely different language to the rest of the Dutch. And apparently it is by far the closest language to English in the whole of Europe that isn't English.
Wow.
So I'll pop up there and,
But do you think you'd understand
Well,
them?
I don't know. It's worth a go, isn't it? Go up there. Hello, sir. That's a nice cow you've got.
I mean, of course they will respond to you in English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Other facts. So the Dutch East Indies Company, you've heard of that?
I have indeed.
Yeah. That was, and by quite some margin, the biggest company that has ever existed in the whole world. By today's, if you used the old inflation calculator, by today's money, it would be worth $7.8 trillion. It's a lot, isn't it?
That's a lot of money.
And that's considering Apple is only worth $2.2 trillion at the moment. So it's nearly 4 times the size of Apple. And the reason they were so successful, apparently they invented all sorts of modern sort of financial things to fund them. So they invented the first stocks and shares, the first stock exchange.
I see.
And
yeah.
all of this. So this is
economic leverage.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which led to the first investment banks, and of course the first ever bubble, the famous tulip bubble.
Which is a joy, isn't it, when you read it, when you first learn about that in school?
Yeah.
You go, what idiots, what fools! And flowers are everywhere. And then you realise, but that's the whole point of a bubble.
Yeah.
You don't know you're in one until it pops. I think one of the other reasons the Dutch East India Company was so profitable was I think their labour costs were quite low, weren't they?
Yeah, they did find ways to cut down on labour. Yeah, quite interestingly, a number of Dutch people have told me that they invented slavery. And I've always looked at them and gone, no.
With pride?
Well, no,
Did they say that? Oh, the company, not themselves.
No, but they did Dutch people are very much like the British and the Americans in that they say they've invented everything. But one of the ones that I've heard a number of Dutch people say is they invented slavery. And I've looked at them and I thought, hang on a minute. I think probably the ancient Egyptians will have a word with you about that at the very least. And there's probably societies long before them that were doing it as well.
I was about to say, it's like the word slave comes from Slav because people from Eastern Europe were basically stolen by the Ottoman Empire. or the precursor to the Ottoman,
Yeah, so I'm not sure what they mean by that.
It's very sweet of them to... I don't know why you'd want to hold on to that one. I think that's when you can happily let go to someone else. Probably when you want to be shoving onto...
You could probably easily get away with shoving it onto us, couldn't you, really?
I mean, yeah, everyone else does. So
Exactly.
usually, that's the thing, is usually they're right. But I think your Egyptian thing is pretty spot on there.
Yeah. The Dutch, as everybody well knows probably, the Dutch are the tallest people in the world, with an average height of 5'11" for men, 5'7" for women. It's pretty tall, isn't it?
That is tall, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of unnecessary. What do you need all those extra inches for?
I don't know. There's 18 million bicycles in the Netherlands, which is more than there are people, and it's double the number of cars they have. Dutch inventions as well. It's got these are confirmed Dutch inventions, unlike the
Confirmed. Okay.
confirmed Dutch inventions or discoveries. Continental drift, the first modern atlas.
Okay.
The music cassette, the CD, the Laserdisc, the DVD, and the Blu-ray. All of those were jointly developed with Sony, so they're half Dutch. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, half Swedish, half Dutch. The donut, gin.
I thought Bluetooth isn't that a Danish king? I thought it was a Danish invention.
It's a half Swedish, half
Norwegian?
Dutch, apparently.
Oh, okay, cool.
Cocoa powder, same-sex marriage, the pendulum clock, mercury thermometer, kidney dialysis machine, artificial heart, metronome, telescope, golf, ice skating, yachts, the thermostat, the fire hose, gas lighting, and that's actual gas lighting, not the...
Oh, okay. Gas lights, not...
meat slicer, speed camera, submarine, and four-wheel drive car. So, yeah, it's a real mixed bag there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very impressive. And it's also the second time I think you've told us that yachts were invented by the Dutch. Yeah. They must be very proud of that.
Yeah. Also, a Dutch person once told me that you know those metal wallets that you put cards in that stop them getting red.
Yes.
Yeah, a Dutch person told me that they invented them as well, but I could not find any evidence of that to be the case.
Well, bearing in mind the Dutch seem happy not having curtains on ground floor windows and also literally just putting their names on buildings, I do not believe for 1 second that there's enough people in Holland or the Netherlands who think that hiding your card is something that they need to bother about.
That is a good point. I had not thought about that. Yeah. Just a couple of last things about the Dutch. Back to sailing. So if you walked down the street in Britain and you asked a passerby who discovered Australia, what would they say?
Captain Cook, I assume.
Yeah, they would, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Complete nonsense.
By the way, I think most Australians would say that.
Yeah, utter nonsense. It was discovered by a Dutchman called Willem Janzoen in 1606. He discovered it.
Okay.
Which is 164 years before Captain Cook.
Yeah.
Right. His initial voyage only went around a little bit of it, and he found this outcrop of land. And do you know what he called that outcrop of land that he found?
No.
He called it New Zealand.
No. Of course.
It was only subsequently when Abel Tasman, who you probably have heard of Tasmania, and the man who discovered New Zealand, who was also Dutch, when he went over there, he discovered a lot more of Australia, and then he also discovered New Zealand, and then he decided to call New Zealand instead of Australia, and he called Australia New Holland, and it was called that for years. It was called New Holland for absolutely years because Australia was the name for the South Pole. So Antarctica was called Australia, but then they decided, no, we're going to call that Antarctica. We'll use the name Australia and change the name of New Holland because the British don't want to call it New Holland anyway because they've now taken over Australia. So it's very complicated down there and confusing.
It's very complicated.
They must have been changing maps left, right, and centre all the time.
Well, it must have been very frustrating for the person who invented the first modern app.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a bit like that episode of Blackadder with the dictionary, isn't it? You
know? Or maybe he was doing it to sell more.
It's a perfectly cromulent map.
Yeah, my contrafabulation? No, contrafabulations.
Please excuse my contrafabulation. So explain to me then, if you can, and you can always cut this out if you can. So when Captain Cook discovered Australia, he already knew it was there.
Yes.
Right. So so what the hell happened there then?
No, it already been on.
Not least because the evidence is because I've always wondered why. Because obviously I think maybe like a lot of people who have heard of Zealand, you only hear of Zealand after you've heard of New Zealand. Yeah. It's one of those things where I never considered it's like, oh, I don't know why it's called New Zealand, especially because there's nowhere in Britain called New Zealand. So like the evidence is there that somebody found it first.
Yeah.
It was not English. Yeah. Gosh, so what happened?
Basically, it was been on the maps for about 150 years. He went over there and just changed the name to New South Wales, set up shop. I think because the British were willing to stick around there, whereas I think the Dutch went there, looked at it, mapped it, went, it doesn't...
Job done.
Yeah, don't really want to hang around here. It's a bit hot. And these spiders keep trying to eat me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's very British, isn't it? That's brilliant.
Also, they're probably a bit scared by the concept of so much land as well, you know.
Oh, that must be chilling.
Loads of free land that they didn't make themselves.
Some of it as many as 1.5 to 2 meters above sea level.
Yeah, exactly.
So nosebleeds. That's probably what it was. It was just the nosebleeds they got from that altitude. The altitude sickness from the second story of the building. No, that all makes sense now.
Yeah, right. So that's basically the entire history of the Netherlands there for you, Mark.
Brilliant. It's actually, what I thought was really interesting is that it's currently the 16th most densely populated country.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that in this episode, we'll hear from Michael Rodd. At that point in 1973, he says it's the number one most densely populated country in the world. And what I love about it is that he says that from a mostly empty field in the middle of nowhere. So it's kind of intriguing that things have changed.
I'm surprised it was that densely populated then. You'd still think that somewhere like, I don't know, Japan or Korea or something like that was more densely populated.
Yeah, he's adamant though, isn't he?
He was probably only counting white countries back then anyway.
That's probably true, Russ. That's probably true.
Anyway, speaking of Michael Rodd, shall we take on with it?
Let's do it. Let's get on with it.
Well, excitement abounds, Mark. It's a whole new title sequence.
That's right, Russ. I'm so excited. So brand new images to go with the same classic theme tune. And you'll be delighted to know I've made a list.
Oh, have you?
I have. I've made a list to share with you and the listeners at home. So we start with a horrifically coloured tram passing through a very grey intersection. And it is a horrifically coloured tram. What is it, kind of like dysentery beige, would you say?
I would say so, yeah.
That is followed by a traffic light turning green for pedestrians. A very British-looking traffic light, I thought. There was nothing particularly interesting. Like the shape of the red and the green man, I thought were very British-looking.
Wasn't wearing clogs or anything. Is that what you're suggesting?
Or a hat like in East Germany or something like that. And that was followed by some images of Dutch people walking and cycling through the city, where it does look pretty cold and miserable.
Yep.
We have a weird probe-type thing shaking about in a panicked way, attached to what looks like it might be like a lander to explore other moons and planets, which we will of course learn about later on.
Yep.
What I've written down is an almost platonic ideal of a 1970s park keeper. Bloody hell, he's got a bloody peaked cap and everything, and he's in the park and he's raking leaves.
He looked a lot like Johnny Morris in Animal Magic there, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely. And he looks like he'd stab your ball for playing on a windmill, because Holland.
Yep.
Various different sized watercraft in a harbour, because Holland.
Mm-hmm.
A chilling shot of a man with a skinless transparent skull and piercing red eyes, over which the title of the show is superimposed, and of course we'll learn about him later on. He may not be real, I'll add that there. 3 quickly cut shots of one of those TV tower type things that, you know, our continental cousins seem so very fond of. 2 of which were at what I'm going to describe, Russ, as literal Dutch angles.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, a blinking board of lights and buttons. And then finally we have a helicopter shot of, I think, Rotterdam, over which is superimposed the words "from Holland."
Very nice.
It's a treat for the eyes.
Beautiful summation there.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a joy. It was a joy to capture all that for posterity.
My small observations from that. Number 1, it starts with the whoosh noise that we had
in the
previous episode. This time it's suggesting that it's a tram making that noise.
Jet-powered tram.
Jet-powered tram.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I've yet to encounter a jet-powered tram on the streets of... they're normally quite quiet, actually. Sometimes a little too quiet if you're looking in the wrong direction and suddenly one's nearly taking your head off. But also, secondly, that windmill... We have sat underneath that windmill, Mark.
We have.
That was the one that's actually in Amsterdam.
I did feel like I recognised it, and I was going to ask you if that was the same one, but then it just seemed so ridiculous that it would be the one in Amsterdam. I thought, there's no way that's the one, and that was the one I sat underneath and had a beer with Russ.
It's a BBC film crew we're talking about here, Mark. Of course it's the one closest to the airport.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's the De Goya windmill, I think it's pronounced, or something like that. And also that mast is in Rotterdam. That's the Euro mast. I don't know whether it still is, but it certainly was the tallest building in the Netherlands at one point. And the first time I ever visited this country, came here on a school trip. It was a school technology trip when we were about 12, I think. And we went up it on a really, really, really horrible day. Like, even more horrible than it looks in this episode. It's actually lashing with rain, mist and everything like that. So we couldn't see anything on the top deck. Yeah, so it was nice to see that again. Maybe I'll go up there one day again when the weather's nicer. But yeah, so should we crack on with his first report?
Please do, let's.
The Dutch have always had a strange relationship with the sea. It is at one and the same time their greatest asset and their greatest enemy. This is the heart of Europort, the world's biggest port, a monument to Holland's traditional ability to make the most out of the sea. Where I'm standing now, like much of the land on which Europort is now built, was once the sea. It is land that has been reclaimed to make room for Holland's booming industries and bulging population. All over this country, the Dutch have reclaimed many, many hundreds of square miles of land, and though the sea has a habit of fighting back, the Dutch still look to reclamation as the answer to their unending shortage of space. We're now off the entrance to Europort in the busy shipping lanes in the mouth of the River Rhine, and though we're only a couple of miles or so off the Dutch coastline here, even in this position, it's clear how angry and exposed the North Sea can be. And yet it's in locations like this that the Dutch are now planning to establish islands, to build up from the seabed 20 meters below us, giant man-made platforms, big enough to house heavy industry, chemical refineries, oil refineries, waste reprocessing plants, perhaps even one day, even airports and towns.
And they've already got the tools for the job. This is a suction dredger. It sucks sand from the sea bottom.
Precies in het zuivergebied. Ja, je zit zo precies.
It is sand that will form the island's base, siphoned from the sea, carried to the site and dumped. In loads of 5,000 tons at a time, the silt is released from the hoppers and precisely shot back into the sea until it forms a sand plateau beneath the surface. But it's a foolish man that builds on sand alone. Something tougher is needed. Granite rocks up to 6 tons apiece will be the sea defences. The rocks will ring the sand platform. Again, the Dutch have already designed special machinery.
Booming industries and bulging population, Mark. I've missed Rod's ability to weave a phrase. Yeah, something to behold, isn't it?
Yeah, I particularly love one day places like this will throb with industry, he says as well.
I mean, I don't know whether he's got sort of some, whether he's been hanging around the red light district too much and he's visited Amsterdam.
But no, I was going to say, obviously, I was joking earlier when I said, they show a picture of a windmill because, of course, it's Holland. There's nary a jazz cigarello or a lady of a night to be seen in this, which is a shocking amount of reserve from, I'm sure, a BBC crew who are probably high on their per diems. But that does not mean he's not trying to fit as much sexual innuendo into his... Accidentally, of course, knowing Rod, as we do.
Yeah.
Pure filth at times. Pure filth.
And also, I think it's quite interesting that he's illustrating these booming industries and bulging population by standing in the most desolate, uninhabited place I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, so this is Europort, Mark. Do you know what port is Dutch for?
Do I know a port is Dutch for? I mean, I'd hazard a guess it's Dutch for port.
Yeah, I thought that. It's not.
Oh, no?
The Dutch word for port is haven or haven.
Okay.
Port means gate.
Oh,
So, it's actually,
okay.
so this is actually the gateway to Europe, it's called, or the gate of Europe. Oh, that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Quite interesting. Dangerously informative for our podcast.
But yeah, no, so I think this is probably inevitably the bleakest of the segments because he is in that bleakest of oceans, the North Sea. It's only something I've really thought about a lot since living here. But the whole concept of reclaiming land from the sea is absolute mad, isn't it? It sounds hugely expensive and really difficult. And I don't really know of any other countries in the world that ever have done it to any great degree.
I think it's incredible. The one that immediately came to mind when I was watching this was Hong Kong in the 90s because they built the new airport.
Yeah.
And they completely made a brand new island. And actually, funny enough, Hong Kong Disney is also on reclaimed land as well. And that's because obviously there just isn't enough land in and around Hong Kong because it's quite a lot of people live there, but it's also quite mountainous basically. And I also vaguely remember Japan or Korea doing it for the World Cup in 2002, like literally reclaiming land to build a stadium on or something like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, no, it doesn't really happen very often because it's bloody expensive.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible. Just the idea of making new land.
Yeah. And the fact that
That's what made Superman Returns such a compelling film, Russ.
And the fact that we're doing it for 500 years as well.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's incredible because obviously that was one of Boris Johnson's wheezes, wasn't it? He was going to build a new London airport in the middle of the Thames Estuary.
Oh,
a brand new island. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that would have. I'm sure that would have been bang on time.
And under budget.
Under budget if that had gone
absolutely.
ahead.
Yep.
No contracts going to anybody that he knows. But what I think is quite interesting here is that this Europort is that there's one part of this where Rod says that they are thinking of making islands 25 miles out into the sea.
Yes.
Why would they do that? Because surely the point of making new land is you're extending the mainland.
Yes.
What was the benefit of having an island miles out in the ocean?
The implication of what he's saying is that these new islands will be where the Dutch government will place heavy industry, which leads to one of two problems as far as I can see. One I spotted and one you spotted. If they're close enough to the land so they can be serviced by the mainland, then they are a blight on the view from the beautiful Dutch beaches that we all love. But if they're so far out that you can't see them, then how on earth do you deliver anything to them except by helicopter?
Yeah, exactly.
It's utter nonsense. Surely it is absolute madness. Because the idea of like creating additional land because that's where you're going to put your heavy plant and like your your big factories as well. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. But like no one wants to see it. If they make all this stuff, they can't just keep it on the island. They have to bring it back.
In which case you might as well just extend the land. Yeah, which you might not be surprised, Mark, is actually what they did. There's no such thing as those islands out in the North Sea. They have, however, continued to expand Europort, which is one of the biggest ports in the world. Its big advantage, apparently, is that because the Rhine and the Meuse, or Meuse, I don't know how you pronounce it, another river, they both come out where Rotterdam is. So you can do something which I don't think we do in Britain. You can transport loads of stuff by river. We don't really have river transport, do we, in Britain, very much? Like I don't really think.
Well, the problem with inventing things first time round is that you don't tend to improve them. So I think the canal network in Britain obviously was revolutionary. Everyone looked at it and thought, yeah, we'll do that, we'll make it bigger. And then by the time Britain was thinking like, oh yeah, maybe we should expand our canals, like we've invented trains now. And everyone looks like, yeah, what a great idea, let's make it bigger. It's like, oh no, so Britain's still trapped with Victorian rail networks so yeah, no, exactly. So obviously they have huge, they're not even rivers really, they're basically gigantic canals, but like on a mega scale, and they still use them, don't they? I remember passing on the Eurostar and seeing a gigantic ship going through Holland.
Yeah, well, my previous flat here was on the river. And one thing that surprised me is that you sometimes see them transporting wind turbines, the sort of offshore turbines, and they don't transport them lying down, they transport them upright.
Do they really?
Yeah, and they're really, really tall.
That seems like a very peculiar choice, but
yeah.
I suppose, did you take a picture? That's an
I
epic
did,
picture,
yeah.
Yeah, of course you
did
did.
take a picture, yeah. I was quite surprised by that. They were nearly as tall as like the sort of the tallest building in Amsterdam that they were going past. They were that tall.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I think Rod's doing some good stuff here. Firstly, he has a surprising, I think he's surprisingly good sea legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. The boat he's sitting in, addressing us from, is in unbelievably choppy water.
It's horrible to watch, actually.
Like,
Very
it's
challenging.
really going up and down. And
Yeah,
he's
it
just
really
sitting there talking to us through the camera as if absolutely nothing's happening, as if he's on a boating lake.
He's talking about how you can witness how angry the North Sea is, and he's really not wrong. You can tell, and because the weird thing is, like, it does not look like it's a storm. It does not look like it's a bad day. It is just that is the North Sea, and it's kind of most benign, and that boat is all over the place. And fair play to him, he is stock still and delivering like a champ.
Yeah,
I was gobsmacked, Russ. As were you, I think, as well.
Yeah. I mean, if it was Raymond, obviously, I'd imagine, he's got his own yacht, so...
Of course he does.
Can't imagine Rod's got his own yacht, has he?
No, I do not want to. No, he doesn't have his own yacht.
No. Unless Raymond
Do Rover make yachts?
So he does quite a good job of explaining how they make the new land. But one thing he didn't show is actually what that... Because I don't know whether they machines existed then or whether they've been invented. So I think they were existed then. But that machine, I looked into how that works. The thing that gets all the sand.
It's a suction dredger, he says, yeah.
Yes, suction dredger. But one thing they missed showing is it doesn't just drop the sand into the water. It fires it out of a huge cannon. And that's so that it can pile it up without that boat itself getting stuck. But so what you
of course, yeah.
so what you end up with is you end up with just like a boat sitting there, just firing sand towards the land at a huge rate. It can fly through the air, I think about 200 meters through the air. It's called rainbowing, named after the brown-coloured rainbow it produces. But I just wonder, like, that's going to cause all sorts of damage to the local ecology, isn't it? Like, if you're just sucking up the entire seabed and firing it through the sky. I mean, do they just not care because it's the North Sea?
I think they don't care because of the North Sea. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, crabs be damned.
It's got to be one of the most beleaguered and least cared about stretches of water, isn't it? The North Sea. It's so industrialised and manky.
It looks horrible, doesn't it? Well, when we were in The Hague, and The Hague is sort of by the sea, and we were on the sea, and it was a beautiful day. It really was lovely and sunny. It was in April, but it was, you know, when the sun was out, it was lovely and warm. The sea looked bleak, and I don't think it could be the hottest, sunniest, most summery, wonderful day, and that sea would look bleak and turgid and toxic,
turd-filled,
angry and turd-filled. Absolutely, it's just so unwelcoming, and you know it's cold, and it's proud to be cold. Because fuck you guys. You know, if you're gonna treat me this way, I'm gonna make your beaches miserable. No, horrible place.
Slather yourselves in goose fat before you even attempt to come in here. So Europort, as I said, it's huge and still one of the busiest ports in the world. They handled, 12 million containers in 2015. That's quite a lot, isn't it? It does a lot of petrochemical stuff. I looked at a map of it, and it's basically just, it sticks out. So you got Rotterdam here, and then it's a big load of stuff that sticks out to the west of Rotterdam. It was built in 2 stages. There's Maasvlakte 1, which they started in the 1960s, and I presume we're just kind of finishing off here. This is where Rod is at the moment.
Yeah.
But obviously that over the years that filled up fairly quickly. So then from 2008, they start to build Maasvlakte 2, which took them 5 years to build, and there's still plenty of room for development there, but the land's all there. And in order to build that land, they had to shift 240 million cubic metres of sand using their big sand spraying ships. But what was interesting about that is that at the bottom of that new one, there's a thing called the Slufter. What's the Slufter? And it used to be a nudist beach, but now they've converted it into an extremely deep pit, which is somehow shielded from the surroundings. And they just get all of this toxic waste that they make in the area, just chuck it in there.
Well, that's sustainable. Well done, everyone.
And they expect it to be completely full by the year 2025.
Oh, well, that's my holiday plans.
And then they're just going to leave it.
Just open to the elements, like full.
I don't know.
With all this toxic waste just lapping at the sides.
Just nail a lid over the top of it. I don't know what they're going to do with that.
Wow. I always imagine the Dutch to be very progressive, and they are. I'm really thinking outside the box.
Oh, yeah, just hope nobody accidentally parks one of those big sand spraying ships on top of it and it just starts spraying all the toxic waste.
Oh my God, that's the one thing they don't want to happen, Russ.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, there's not a lot I could tell you about your report, and I mean, you can go down there and have a look at it. I imagine it's probably quite ugly. That is a sort of a thing with the Dutch, because they don't really have scenic countryside, really, because none of it's natural. There's not really a sense of, oh, this view needs to be protected, or this location needs to be, the natural environment needs to be kept, because it shouldn't be there in the first place. So I don't think they're that averse to just dumping a chemical works in wherever they want it, or
that's fair enough.
So yeah,
who are we to judge? I mean, I think people fetishize the countryside anyway, so it doesn't bother me. As long as it's not my back garden, I'm fine. The other thing I wanted to say is, at the beginning, Rod talks about how part of the reason they're doing this land reclamation is because of how densely populated the Netherlands is, and how, like, he talks about bulging population and they need additional space. And that just, I know we discussed this before when we were talking about the episode, what did I say, episode 5, which is the one from Vancouver, and it was about habitat, and it was about cities. And again, it's just like, at this time, there was a real obsession with overpopulation as being this. I suppose it's existential threat. I suppose it's an intrinsic threat, because it's literally us producing more of us to. But it was going to end the world, basically, overpopulation. I just find it fascinating, because this is not the only time he mentions it. He does mention it later on. This idea of a country almost bursting at the seams, basically, it seems to be the implication, even though it really isn't. Yeah, it's clearly part of the narrative of why they're
Yeah, and I mean, compared to now, what is it? They probably had less than half the people then than they have now, didn't
what
they?
was the population? 14 million or something like that? Am I in and around the right ballpark?
Yeah, I think so, something like that, yeah.
You'd guess 7 or 8,
million.
wouldn't you? 16 million, yeah. Well, you said there was 18 million bicycles, and that was more than the population. So yeah, let's say 16.5 million or something like that. So what would you say back here? 10, 11? Maybe 9. It's like, they didn't realise how good they had it.
No. 13 million in 1973.
13. That's quite a slow growth
It is,
rate
isn't it?
then. Yeah. But still, plenty of space for those tall Dutch babies we all hear about.
Well, they can stack them upright anyway.
They can, Russ. There's plenty of space above them.
Right, shall we... Oh, actually, I'm just going to nip off and make a bacon sandwich, Mark. I don't really want to watch this next segment.
Go for it.
Travel affects us all. Transporting oneself around adds up to strain. And strain isn't confined to us humans. These pigs are fellow sufferers. The pig is sturdily built and has a stout heart, but the rush hour melee affects him deeply. More and more pigs die in transit, and 15% of those that make it arrive at the butchers with inferior meat. Dutch scientists have moved into the sty to analyse the travel stress problem and make things easier for their pigs. An electrocardiograph on this landrace sow will measure her heart rate before and during the journey to the slaughterhouse.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
At this stage, it's beating about 70 to the minute. Normal. She's pretty calm so far. Outside, the wagon is already loaded with 20 young porkers. The walk up the ramp is a critical moment.
Nou, we zijn weer in de wagen. Gooi je de hekken erin.
The climb, followed by jostling from the younger pigs, sends the sow's heart racing. This is conventional pig transport, large numbers packed tight. Pigs can't sweat. In these conditions, their temperature soars and adds to the stress. On the journey, the scientists found that the heart rate was a steady 160 a minute. The pork from many of these pigs will be pale, dry, and fibrous. So they know the symptoms and at least one cause of pig stress. Now the Dutch have come up with one remedy, the container. Another batch of Great Yorkshires leaves the piggery. This time, there's no pushing and shoving. 2 men find it easy to guide a large number of pigs to the containers. They're on ground level, none of that anxiety-making climb. By dividing the container into compartments, the Dutch research team have improved the social atmosphere too. Pigs are cliquey. They like their own set from the sty. Others, they'll fight. Once the container is full, 20 pigs, all in their separate compartments, the whole thing is moved bodily onto the truck. But now the machine is taking the strain, not the pigs.
The pig is sturdily built and has a stout heart, Mark.
Yay. Lucky to have it.
No match for the abattoir, though, I wouldn't have thought.
No, they're lucky to have it for the little amount of time they're on God's green earth.
Well, it's been a while since we had some evil farmers, isn't it, Mark?
It really is.
And I think this is absolutely ticks that box beautifully. This is quite distressing.
I think we both. Obviously, you saw this before me, but when I watched it, you didn't. You never tip your hand, but you just say this was a good episode. When I watched this, I thought, oh God, we've not had farmers in a while. And then obviously, as it goes on, it just becomes like not bleak in terms of color, but just bleak in terms of morals. I was thinking like, oh bloody hell! I just felt like you. And then I remember thinking like, I've kind of missed this. I've kind of missed this. I've kind of missed just how horrible animal husbandry and agriculture was in the 70s, and just how honest they were about how dreadful what dreadful people they were.
I just can't comprehend the cognitive dissonance, because he's talking about the pigs in some ways. He's talking about how we would, like, what do you say, something like its morning commute and all this, like sort of like humanising them in a way.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, just talking about the quality of the meat and any distress that occurs to them. The concern is nothing to do with just the basic fact that you are distressing the animal. The only concern is the meat quality. That is what they're concerned about, isn't it? Like, the only reason this problem is being solved is not for any sort of animal welfare reasons. It is just to improve the quality of the meat once they slaughter them. And Rod is completely clear and blunt about that, unapologetically.
No, you're right. I mean, what did you say? The pork from many of these pigs will be pale, dry, and fibrous. I think that's the point he's trying to drive home. And you're absolutely right. The cognitive dissonance, the disconnect between his kind of slightly bubbly, uplifting, kind of cutesy language in some respects about, oh, look at them, look at their little faces as they, to just the sheer mechanical fact that none of this has got anything to do with them and everything to do with the final product.
Yeah.
Everything else be damned. I mean, if torturing them made much more delicious pork, we'd be seeing them hung, drawn, and quartered for our delicious entertainment. It's astonishing. Actually, it really is. I mean, just before we get into it, actually, partly because I can't quite work out how we get into it. I did want to say that at the beginning, there's a lovely montage of people on their own commute. As you say, that's the parallel, isn't it? And it's lots of different shots of kind of Dutch people again cycling around and walking around miserably. But not as miserable as the solo Rod who walks around in the background and sits down looking sad and forlorn in his Macintosh. It's absolutely brilliant. I will try and make sure that a picture can be put on just because, like, it's sad Rod. It's like sad Keanu, but like decades before.
Do you reckon that's a regular part of his commute, no matter where he is? He always chooses a spot to sit down and look forlorn.
And just feel sad about dry, fibrous pork.
Just sits there to contemplate his lost music career for a couple of minutes. I also noticed, I don't really notice that Abraham Lincoln was trying to cross the road at one point in that.
I did not notice until you were good enough to clip a picture and stick it into our notes. And normally, Russell, you know my view of your ability to spot a lookalike. It's appalling. It's almost a criminal act in some cases. This is pretty good. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, you only see 44% of his face. And it's the top half, I should say. Minus the hat. But that's not a bad spot, Ross. That's some good eyes you have there. I think I was just more focusing just how miserable everyone looks. It's almost like they're on the trip to the abattoir.
Why do you think they're backgrounding it with those weird science fiction-y sort of Doctor Who type sound effects? What's that meant to be illustrating?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, except that, if I'm being generous, I think it's supposed to be conveying the tumult and the chaos of, like, modern society.
Right.
You know, it's like the cacophony of people and the cacophony of sound. And I mean, they really could just have played like the sound of the trams and people walking, but I think they added on to kind of create a sense of stress in the audience as well. That's what I think they were going for. I think it's whatever.
I mean, it pales in comparison to the stressful nature of the device that they attach to the pig. I mean, the use of a heart monitor to increase stress is quite a good, like, cinematic device, isn't it? I mean, probably the greatest example is that I can think of is Aliens, where in Aliens they've got that motion sensor that's almost like a heart monitor, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's such a good way. It's such a good way of building tension and increasing stress levels.
Yeah.
These scientists seem to have just gone, right, that is not stressful enough. So they have picked the most irritating,
oh my gosh,
alarming noise they can and put it in this little box and attached it to this. And surely it's affecting their test, because surely it's like a self-reinforcing. If I was in a stressful situation and I had a device stuck to me that was going like more and more as more stressed I got, I think it probably creates some sort of feedback loop and, you know, make things worse. Can we describe it
as well? Because the pig that's wearing this, he's wearing this kind of leather harness, and on his back is, what would you say? It's like a 30 centimeter long, like a foot long box, which is maybe 15 centimeters wide, and again, like 10 centimeters tall. It has, like, you know, like an antenna coming off it. Like, it's not a small thing. It's not subtle.
No.
And then it has some wires and some pads. And I guarantee, I was thinking about this, and thinking, like, I guarantee they've super glued those pads. pig. I was thinking about this a lot. I think they've glued those because obviously it doesn't matter.
No. As long as one doesn't fall in the pork scratchings machine, they don't.
And then they send this pig on its merry way. And you're right. It's like it's not going boom 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 boom. It is high pitched screeching noise, which starts off bad and gets worse as the heartbeat increases. It is so difficult to believe. Pigs have relatively large ears. You can picture them. Those little kind of flaps. It's like I cannot imagine what that poor thing was going through as it was. And bearing in mind, like, you know, this is already its final march. And now it's being mocked by this screeching soundtrack. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah. He says that the pig's normal heart rate is 70 beats per minute, which I think is pretty much the same as a human.
Well, I think resting heartbeats, like, it depends on who you are. It's like, what was it, like 40 to 60? You know, so yeah. And they're a bit smaller, so you can imagine that it would be. Yeah. But that's not bad. That's not, you know.
Yeah.
And so
but the fact it shoots up to 160, I mean, that's get the heart pills out time, isn't it? That sort of jump in.
Well, it's been shoved up a ramp into. There are too many pigs being shoved into too small a van.
Yeah.
And the scientists are trying to. It's almost like there's like, I don't know, maybe this might be stressful for them. Let's find out. And the weird thing is, like, they just focus on the ramp.
Yeah,
they become obsessed with this ramp, this steep-ish ramp. It's like that is where the stress is, not the fact that they're all being squeezed into a very small space,
and the fact that it's too hot and they can't sweat. There's another thing that's mentioned.
Sweat. Yeah.
It's mentioned that it's too hot and they can't sweat, but there's no mention.
But still, they persist
made
in
of
just
any
putting them all.
attempt
No, not at all. And then, you know, fair enough. The vehicle has open sides, which is thinking, oh, that might cool them down. Except then they careen down a motorway at, you know, 80 kilometers an hour, which I'm assuming is not their natural lifestyle in the piggery.
No.
The whole thing is just miserable. And the fact that it's all dressed up in what it means for the final delicious porky product is really dispiriting.
You questioned whether there would be that much of a effect.
So I suppose my question was, because the implication seems to be that Rod's script is arguing that this final journey may well end up in this pale, dry, fibrous pork. And my question was, I mean, genuinely, how much of the last 4 hours of a pig's life actually dictates?
Loads, Mark. Loads.
Amazing. Because the thing is, like, to transform like the actual entire body of a pig so quickly gives an indication of just how shockingly treated they are. But go on, please tell me. Sorry.
Well, you've got two issues. So you've got
disgusted and hungry.
It depends how far they're transporting a pig. Mm-hmm. So if it's over a short distance, then you're in danger of getting a thing called PSE, right? And PSE stands for pale, soft, exudative, which means oozing, meats.
Okay.
So that what happens there is if you suddenly stress them out just before slaughter.
Yep.
So say you live just down the road from the slaughterhouse.
Yep.
And you've just shoved them right up a ramp. Done what these lads have done, basically. Yep. And what it does is they produce loads of lactic acid, like as a stress response, and all of their muscles all get lactic acid in it, and it changes the pH of their muscles, and that's what causes the flesh to all go pale, soft, and oozing, right? And in some cases, it's so bad that they just have to chuck the meat out. But then you've got the opposite problem. If you're on too long a journey, then you end up with DFD meat, which is dark, firm, and dry meat. Mm. And that's what's happened there, is that they've been under stress for so long that basically their body is like completely run out of lactic acid, and because it's just burnt through all of it. So the pH is their meat is the opposite end of the scale, and this makes their meat darker and dry and less tasty. So it's a real balancing act on how long and how far you've got to torture the pig for. So it releases just the right amount of lactic acid into its muscles. Spot. Yeah, sweet spot of fear. So their meat is just the perfect pH when they're slaughtered, and then you're okay. But it does turn out, right? Believe it or not, the ramp is still...
Shut up, Russell. Hush your goddamn mouth.
Honestly, the ramp is the sticking point in a lot of cases, apparently, to the point the EU stipulate that a ramp can be no more than 20 degrees angle, they've decided. Because any more than that, and it distresses the pig too much. Apparently, pigs are absolutely confounded by ramps. And they find them a real stressful thing to go up.
Okay.
There have been a number of solutions to this. I don't seem to be able to find exactly what they're using in this VT, because they're like loading them into a cage and then loading the cage onto the lorry, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I thought quite a steep angle.
Yeah, so I could not find a single one of those. Ones I found ones where it's more like a lift. So it's like a 3-story lorry.
Yep.
This is in America, this one. And they sort of put the pigs on a lift and then they go up and then they push them in, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And load the lorry up that way.
Yeah.
Somebody else came up with a much simpler idea of just having the pig loading bay at a higher level. So that seems
like the obvious thing to do.
I mean, that is the obvious thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know why they've all not done that.
Okay.
But then somebody else, only in 2020, some scientists went, hang on a minute, why don't we just, when the pigs are born, give them some ramps to play on? So they suggested that as long as you give them ramps to play on with their piglets, then once they go to slaughter, which is only like 5 months later, apparently, they grow quite big, like quite quickly. They'll still remember the ramps when they're kids and go, oh yeah, brilliant, love a ramp, let's go up there. Hey, ramp fun.
It's the best day ever.
yeah. So I looked through the DEFRA pig transportation leaflet, which gave me all the various rules and
done for saying
regulations.
leaflet, not policy.
Obviously, it's actually out of date because it contains EU rules.
Well, I mean, except that we ported them all over.
Yes, but it does say these rules have been withdrawn.
Okay.
There's no updated version.
Replacement, yeah,
exactly.
They all still stand.
I mean, but it's red tape, Mark. I'm sure they'll take the shears to that red tape, and you'll be able to shove a pig up the Matterhorn if you want. Once we get rid of those pesky EU bureaucrats rules.
Well, I can't. I voted for Brexit because I want my delicious DFD pork roast. I'm sick of this delicious, tasty pork. I want it to be oozing and dark.
One thing I noticed in this book was that there's obviously a maximum journey time you can take them on. And if you've got a proper pig lorry, that maximum time is 24 hours, right? And then after that, you have to let them out.
That's quite long, isn't it?
For a run around or whatever. But that time is all the time you've spent on the lorry. Or if you go on a ferry, that time on the ferry counts towards it. But if you go on an aeroplane, the time doesn't count. Which gives me like the thoughts, is that because they sit the pig in a seat, let it watch an in-flight movie, give it a G&T? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Wow.
So it's very strange that why would a pig on
Why
would a pig on an aeroplane mean that time didn't count? I don't know. It's a very strange rule, but that could be a way.
I would have thought being in an airplane would be kind of stressful for a pig.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Even if it was in premium
especially
economy.
Especially when it was banking to take off.
Yeah, that's more than 20 degrees, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of this thing is correct. Meat is strongly affected by how alarmed the pig is.
Can we just say not morally correct?
No. And also ramps are super important.
Gosh,
it does seem that clearly the farmers, I mean, are we surprised, are not too bothered because the majority of them still just push pigs up ramps. But those ramps are only at 20 degrees these days. So I don't know whether that's the magic. That might be the magic number that pigs remain unaffected by ramps, or at least are only affected,
Well, let's be honest. The steeper the angle, the shorter the ramp, the less material you have to buy.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend that no, come on. They're pushing the very envelope to the end. I wanted to highlight the wonderful Flash Harry Spiv style Dutch farmer.
Yeah, there's a couple of characters in this, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
So there's
besides Lincoln.
There's the pig lorry's being driven by Steve Davis for a start.
Fact.
But no, you're right. This fella, he's the character of the whole program, I think. The fellow who's sitting there, and he's smoking a cigar, isn't he? Rather, it's like a small cigar he's smoking rather than
initially I thought it was like a gull wall, but it's way too big. It's way too thick. Yeah, it's definitely a cigar. Yeah,
and he's
living life on the hog.
And he's got that hat like pushed down right over his head, and he looks like both of the steptoes at the same time.
Yes, yeah, that was a good observation.
With a little touch of Noddy Holder in there as well.
Yeah.
You just do not see men that look like that man beyond the 70s, do you? Like, where did all those people that look like that go?
I think they died of like a heart attack from all the pork they were eating.
Yeah, but you definitely need to include him in the pictures.
Yeah. Let me push Flash Harry down.
He's a fascinating looking man.
wonder what the Dutch for spiv is.
He didn't look to me like he necessarily cared that much about animal welfare, though. He didn't have the look of a man that would superglue himself to.
He did not look like he suffered sleepless nights.
No.
Over the mechanical murder of an infinite number of pigs that passed through his watch.
He was probably being particularly nice to the pigs because the TV cameras are there as well.
Oh, yeah, he looked really respectful because the beaver around, yeah.
Actually put half as many on the lorry as he normally does.
Yeah, he wore a smart hat. Had respect. Half as many. So I just, yeah. Goodness knows what happens when the cameras aren't around.
Normally he wears a hat made entirely of ham. Oh yeah, and you noticed as well at the end of the segment there, lovely bit of Rod's everyday sexism.
It's difficult not to notice it. Absolutely. All in all, this Dutch experiment seems to leave everyone better off. Pullman travel for the pig, fatter profit for the farmer, juicier pork for the housewife. Which I thought was just a wonderful little bit of casual sexism there. Because the farmers are all he, and obviously the purchaser is a she.
But also,
I liked your rant though. What about her husband, Rod? You big sexist. He's the one who'll be out there working all day, which I thought was really true. Whereas, like, what we know about housewives is that they're buying pork. Yeah. And actually, the one thing we didn't mention is, like, I was very sad when we were in the suction dredger and we saw the guys, up in the big captain's area with the big steering wheel. I was very sad not to see a wife pop out of a galley with some tea.
Yeah. So I thought I'd end this particular segment with a reading from the PETA website on
okay, cool.
Subsection on pig transportation.
Brilliant.
Now, obviously, PETA have a vested interest in making it sound as bad as possible.
Of course.
So, take this with as much of a pinch of...
A fistful of salt, yeah.
Pinch of lard as you like. But this is what PETA had to say about it. Transport terror. When allowed to live out their natural lives, pigs live for an average of 10 to 15 years. But factory farm pigs are sent to slaughter after just 6 months of life. In order to get the terrified pigs onto the trucks bound for the slaughterhouse, workers may beat them on their sensitive noses and backs or stick electric prods into their rectums. Crammed into 18-wheelers, pigs struggle to get air and are usually given no food or water for the entire journey. They suffer from temperature extremes and are forced to inhale ammonia fumes and diesel exhaust. A former pig transporter told PETA that pigs are packed in so tight their guts actually pop out of their butts. A little soft ball of guts actually comes out. According to a 2006 industry report, more than 1 million pigs die each year from transport alone. Another industry report notes that in some transport loads, as many as 10% of pigs are downers, animals who are so ill or injured that they are unable to stand or walk on their own. These sick and injured pigs will be kicked, struck with electric prods, and finally dragged off the trucks to their deaths. In winter, some pigs will die frozen to the sides of the trucks. In summer, some die from heat exhaustion. Some fall and suffocate when additional animals are forced to pile in on top of them. All are in panic, screaming and desperately trying to get away, and some die of heart attacks. One worker reports, in the wintertime, there are always hogs stuck to the sides and floors of the trucks. Slaughterhouse workers go in there with wires or knives and just cut or pry the pigs loose. The skin pulls right off. The hogs are still alive when we do this. The unloading at the slaughterhouses is as ugly as the loading. After being kept in an immobile state all their lives, their legs and lungs are so weak that the pigs can barely walk. But when they see space ahead of them, some of them begin running for the first time in their lives. Like fillies, they jump and buck, overjoyed with their first feel of freedom. Then suddenly they collapse and cannot get up. They can only lie there trying to breathe, their bodies racked with pain from abuse and neglect on the factory farms. It's nice, isn't it?
I mean, the thing is, like, I wouldn't be shocked if that was moderately accurate.
No,
which is probably why I'm gonna try my hardest to forget what you just said.
I haven't had any bacon this week, Mark, so I'm absolutely fine.
You're saving it all up for after this.
My conscience is clear.
Your conscience is clear. To be fair, my last bit of bacon was Sunday, so I feel I'm not. That wouldn't shock me. That wouldn't shock me, except that I reckon that's probably more likely to be descriptive of the States than it is.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
I always think the Americans are always much worse with meat.
They don't have standards. No. I mean, they do have standards. Sorry, but that was a real kind of throwaway comment. They don't have standards.
They still view meat through the 1970s prism that we see here.
Yeah. They would look at this segment and think, "Oh, that's tomorrow's world." In fact, I reckon, I'm going to guess here, Russ, I reckon every abattoir in the United States is built on ramps.
Right. Next.
Unaccustomed as I am to speaking upside down, this may look rather weird. I'm testing the latest piece of Dutch technology for diagnosing something considerably more uncomfortable than standing on one's head. Brain tumours, deep in the heart of the skull.
Vond u het leuk zo op uw kop staan?
Not so often, I hope. Fine. Thank you very much. This setup is sophisticated but basic X-ray equipment. The X-ray tube is at this end. Across here is the cassette for the film. And behind it is an image intensifier and a television camera so that the radiologist can see the exact shot before the X-ray exposure is taken. But what is entirely new about this setup is the chair that the patient sits in. It's called an isocentric chair. Now, this means that once the patient's head is positioned so that the suspected trouble spot is right in the path of the X-ray beam, without the patient making any movement at all, because, of course, by now he's firmly strapped into the chair, his head can be tilted or rotated around the trouble spot so that the radiologist can get any aspect he wants of the suspected brain tumour. This chap's name is Felix, and once Betty and I have got him into the chair, his transparent head should enable us to see clearly exactly what the benefits of this new system are. These vessels inside the model's head represent the deep cavities of the brains. They're called ventricles. And if there is a brain tumour growing, the ventricles will have pressure on them and their shape will have become distorted. Now, normally, they're full of cerebral spinal fluid, represented on this model by this dark red substance. Unfortunately, cerebral spinal fluid doesn't show up on X-rays. So before anything inside the head becomes visible on an X-ray, something which does show up has to be introduced. Now, the easiest and the safest substance is air. And in the model, the section above the fluid that is apparently empty represents the air. But on an X-ray of this head, the only part of the ventricles that would show up would be the part where the air is, and that may not be the part where the trouble lies. However, now that Felix is sitting in the new chair, if we twist and rotate him, we can eventually move the air bubble into the part of the ventricle that we really want to look at.
The whole thing is remotely controlled. Once the X-ray tube is brought close to the head, the complete unit rotates, locked to the original setting. As I turn Felix on his head, the dark fluid and the air start to change position. The movement will be monitored on a television screen by the radiologist right through the maneuver. Felix is now where I want him, and I can get ready for the actual X-ray shot.
In the notes here, Mark, you've written, do we need to discuss Rod's pronunciation of X-ray?
Mm.
Yes, we do, Mark.
We certainly do, don't we? Yeah, it's a rhetorical question.
Let's kick off with that. He says X-ray.
He does, over and over again. It's X-ray.
It's one of those things, it's quite subtle, but it just sounds wrong, doesn't it? X-ray. Is this a form array?
Yes, yeah. I suppose that maybe it's the plot line of like the next Ghostbusters sequel when only two of the actors can come back. I wouldn't have noticed this were it not for the fact that in order to do this program we have to watch the episode 3 or 4 times, and it just became it revealed itself to me, and probably you as well. He just kept on saying X-ray, and it reminds me of the only thing I can think of is once the right way of pronouncing Newcastle is Newcastle. And once you know that, you hear people from Newcastle talk about Newcastle, and like it sounds weird to begin with, and then it becomes normal. And for some reason, that Newcastle popped into my head when I heard him talking about X-ray. I've actually mispronounced it. I should say X-ray, and that's because it was completely the opposite. Where I was thinking, like, no, that'll never sound normal. That is not how you pronounce that. And he just persists. It's astonishing.
Yeah, actually, it's like Millwall, isn't it?
Millwall, yeah, that's true. That's a good one as well.
Yeah, but I guess, I mean, I was going to say, well, maybe it's because X-rays are new, but actually I just remember they're about 70 years old.
No, they're not new, yeah. Also, he's definitely read the word before. It's not like one of those things where like I've read it, but I've never heard it, or I've heard it, but I've never read it. It's like, X-ray. Oh, it's so peculiar.
I think this is probably sort of the most high-tech bit of kit we've got this episode. It's like a proper invention being showed off to us. It looks
isocentric chair, yeah.
Yeah. It's quite almost science fiction-y, I think. Like, it looks like something. I'm trying to think that just there's in my mind I can picture a science fiction film where somebody gets into one to either shoot a gun or use a computer or do some sort of thing on board a spaceship. It kind of has that feel to it because it's twisting him upside down and lining him up with things and sort of stuff.
I was also trying to rack my brain to try and work out what it was that was itching away, and I just couldn't. And like, I kept on thinking about Disney's The Black Hole, but maybe because that just scared me as a child, like this chair scares me as an adult. And then I was thinking, is it Project X, which is the one about the monkeys and the gyroscopic chairs that are kind of irradiated by, I don't know, the Air Force or something like that? I don't know if you've ever seen that. And then it kind of just reminded me of, which James Bond film is it where like, they basically kill someone but put them in those gyroscopes that turn around. It's just like the idea of being strapped into a chair which moves without your ability to control it is never a good thing.
And it's noticeably his wrists are strapped as well.
I saw that too, yeah.
So that's like a real sort of loss of control there. And I think there's even a bit where Rod is not sure what the machine's doing, and you see a bit see some fear flash across his eyes, don't you?
Yeah, he's shocked that the chair it turns on a different axis. And yes, like it's a big metal chair that it looks like it's to torture you or kill you. And it's on an armature, and it moves in all three directions, up and down, it rotates. And there's whatever the third direction is. Oh, and then it rotates, but it also turns. And the idea is like you can place your head in whatever position they need, which is, okay, fair enough. But it looks so. It's partly because it's a weird thing. It's even thinking back to the last segment. It's like I don't know whether the chair moving quick is better to get you into position, or whether like you'd find that absolutely frightening, or whether it moving slowly is the right thing to do, or just fills you full of dread. But they've not nailed the speed. I mean, it's hugely impressive. Like, it's a big, gigantic piece of equipment. Like, it fills the room. And then, of course, either side, like, your head ends up looking like it's between the barrels of two guns.
Yeah.
Cannons, in fact.
It is definitely something that a Bond villain would strap him into, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you want me to talk? No, I don't. I'm going to kill you right now.
I'm going to turn you upside down, and then I'm going to kill you.
No, I'm going to turn you upside down. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, the nurse seems very friendly, though.
Betty. Is that a classic Dutch name, Betty?
If it's like spelt weird, if it's spelt, I don't know, BETJE.
HXJY. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, all right. Yeah, she seems perfectly lovely.
And she does speak Dutch at one point, and she does. I checked with my Dutch friend Monique, and apparently she said, "Did you like it upside down?" Is what she said.
And his response?
His response, did I write this down?
Not too often, I hope.
Not too often, I hope. So
yeah, which doesn't make any sense.
No. So I assume that he thinks that she said, "Do you like upside down?" Yeah. That makes it sense.
Yeah. Are you often upside down, Rod? Not too often, I hope. Even that doesn't make sense. No, I'm glad you got that translated, because I was wondering. Actually, I have to say, I was wondering what question begs the response, "Not too often." Because like if he'd said something like, "Oh, actually, I'm quite glad I'm this way up now." I mean, that would have been fine. But then at the same time, it's like I suppose this is obviously supposed to be a really good medical bit of equipment. You kind of want people to go like, "Oh, I'd quite like that if I had a tumor in my ventricle, my cranial ventricle," or whatever it was. I have to say, the whole thing is full of what I would consider to be iconic imagery. Not least, we start off with Rod upside down. And as you rightly pointed out, in an earlier segment when he's on the island, on the man-made island in the North Sea, his hair is just being blown all over the place. And it's huge. It's like this
lovely thick head of hair,
voluminous mane, this wild, untamed mane. That,
as untamed as the sea itself.
Oh, angry, furious, full of pent up energy. And yet here he is upside down. It looks like half the hair. It's so odd.
I suppose he hadn't that sea air spray that tends to fluff the old hair a bit, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
It does, yeah. The other sort of iconic look on this is that dummy, Felix the dummy, with two what appear to be cherryade filled bollocks in his skull.
So it's like a classic kind of mannequin, which can move like a kind of a crash test dummy, but the head has been replaced and it's this see-through skull which is already chilling. And as you rightly point out, it is full of cherryade, and that's where at the beginning when I first saw the opening credits and you see this skinless skull with piercing red eyes. It's like, what the hell is going on? And it just the way that it just kind of tilts into view, like it's threatening you, like it has just pulled off whatever evil, despicable scheme it was planning, and now it's here to mock you. And yeah, it's just full of cherryade in what turned out to be, as you rightly point out, bollock-shaped holes in everyone's heads.
Yeah, I've no idea how. Yeah, I mean, I guess that is. I mean,
I suppose ventricle and testicle are very similar words.
They are, aren't they? Yeah. Ventricles, testicles, wallet, and watch. I wonder if.
It's how I never remember. It's how I never forget things when I leave the house.
Yeah, I do wonder whether that's what they're like. But I guess if they actually do use that dummy to test the machine, then they must have made them fairly accurate for the machine. So
I have to assume so.
Yeah.
I was never aware of this, this cranial juice or whatever. I know there's a correct term for it, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what it is. I was never aware of this before.
That does remind me. I always like it when Scottish people refer to all fizzy drinks as juice. I always think that's good. Yeah, so the way that he demonstrates the way this is working sent alarm bells ringing in my head because for whatever reason,
juice-filled testicle head was
for whatever reason, and I don't know why this is the case. X-rays can't see liquids, but they can see air. I guess maybe because air creates a hole that kind of shows up black on the X-ray. Maybe I don't know. So the way that this machine is working is that they are deliberately introducing air into the brain to show up in these ventricles, aren't they? That's what they're doing.
No.
He says that there's a bubble. He says that
it's basically they're repositioning the bubble that already exists to go into a spot so that they can then X-ray the gap. It's not that they're injecting air. It's like the air's already in there, so that we're just taking advantage of it. And in order to do that, we have to strap you down into this gigantic mechanical chair and lift you into a position where you're going to feel really awkward.
Well, you say that, Mark.
That was what was explained to me, Ross. I'm not suggesting this is right or proper.
So apparently,
what have you learned?
This process is called pneumoencephalography, which is a 21-letter long word.
That's a good word, isn't it?
I think Paul Coyer of the Catchword fame would be particularly pleased with that one. It's a nice 21-letter long word. So what they did, obviously they don't do that anymore because it's dangerous and painful.
It's ridiculous.
Is they'd make a puncture in your spine.
Shut up.
They'd make a puncture in your spine and drain your spinal fluid so that the level would drop in your brain bollocks, and they would replace it with either air or oxygen or helium.
Helium,
yeah, it gets up there quicker, I guess.
Okay.
And then that's what they would use for this process.
Wow, which was never at any point explained in this.
So they really were just putting a couple of bubbles in your brain, which I would like. To me, the idea of introducing gas into your, or any sort of like bubbles in the bloodstream or bubbles in the, you're always like warned against it, aren't you? Or sort of like told it's a dangerous thing, or this person had a bubble in their brain. But apparently that's what they used to do in order to get this thing up and running.
But
apparently it was unbelievably painful.
Oh yeah, like spinal taps are apparently awful.
Generally not well tolerated by conscious patients, it said in the description.
Wow,
which had like a nice bit of understatement there.
Well, I thought it was very telling that Rod did emphasise that that the chair could be used on people who were under general anaesthetic.
Yeah.
Not least because the anaesthetist couldn't have ready access to them.
Yeah. Or they just passed out from the pain. Yeah, and apparently, like, afterwards, wide range of side effects as well, including headaches and severe vomiting, often lasting long after the procedure had ended.
Jeez Louise.
So it wasn't a particularly popular process. A quick thing about brain tumours, Mark. Brain tumours, I thought.
Yeah, go on, cheer us up.
Shit myself. Is that what you said?
No, cheer us up.
I thought you said go on, shit yourself.
I don't need to order you to shit yourself, Russ. You just have to wait.
It really sounded like you said go on, shit yourself.
Cheer us up.
Cheer us up.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I'd give you just a couple of brain cancer facts. The ninth most common cancer in the UK. In 2013, there are 10,500 of them diagnosed, and they are the 8th most common cause of cancer death. And in 2012, about 5,000 people died of it. But this is a weird thing. Like, in terms of odds, and I never understand how odds work, because these odds sound incredibly small to me. Apparently, men have a 1 in 143 chance of developing brain cancer. Doesn't sound like much, does it?
Not huge, no.
And a 1 in 188 chance of dying from brain cancer.
Okay.
Whereas women have a 1 in 186 chance of getting it and a 1 in 239 chance of dying from it.
Okay.
I don't think I know anybody who's had a brain tumour. I'm sure I know more than 200 people. Maybe I have to wait until I'm old.
Oh, I've got some news for you, Ross.
But in children, this is even more cheery, Mark. In children, it's second only to leukemia as the most common form of cancer. So if you're under 15, you're most likely to get it. And it's the leading cause of death in people with cancer, children with cancer under 15.
Oh, gosh. I suppose quite a lot of cancers, though, I assume for adults are a bit more lifestyle related, like smoking or eating.
Yeah.
And okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's sad.
But even with them, the survival rate is 74%. So
oh, okay.
That's three in four chance.
You'd like it to be higher, wouldn't you?
But yeah, so this process obviously wasn't very popular with patients. I found the patent for this chair, and it was indeed invented by a Dutchman. His name was Pieter W. Cook. So, but translated into English, that means his name was Peter Cook.
Oh, lovely.
It's Cook. It's Cook. So yeah, so it's a Dutch man called Peter Cook. He patented it in 1976. Unfortunately for him, meanwhile, there was a fella in Britain inventing the CT scanner.
Yeah.
And the CT scanner, thankfully, didn't involve
torture and spinal taps.
Torture, bolting someone to a chair, all that malarkey. Obviously, I'm sure the CT scanner will turn up on the programme at some point when we're going along. But I saw a fact in it which was so exciting, I think I should share it anyway.
Oh, please do.
Just in case. So the man who invented the CT scanner was it used to be called the CAT scan, didn't it? But for some reason they changed it to CT scan. I don't know why. His name was a man called Sir Godfrey Hounsfield, and he worked for EMI.
Oh, okay.
So EMI, before they were a record label, they were also a electronics company as well.
Yeah.
But it was after discovering the Beatles, or at least making the Beatles popular, they decided that there was more money in selling records than there was electronics. So they basically binned off the electronics division, apart from the bit that Godfrey Hounsfield was working for, because he said, oh, can I just stay here? Because I've had this great idea while I was out walking in the countryside. I was thinking about x-rays, and I was thinking about how if I took a load of x-rays of something in slices and then got a computer and put them all together, the computer would then form an image, and I'll be able to look inside something, like somebody's skull, for example. And EMI went, well, we've made shitloads of money from the Beatles. Yeah, why not? So that's what they did. So the Beatles actually funded the development of... They
cross-subsidised the development...
They subsidised the development of the CT scanner, yes.
That's incredible.
I think it was 1972, he managed to build a working one. Apparently, I know everybody talks about MRIs now, but in terms of technological jump, the jump between this torture chair and the CT scanner is far larger than the jump between a CT scanner and MRI scanner. So like everybody in the business regards this as one of the greatest developments ever.
That's fantastic. Do you know, it's almost a shame to waste that kind of brilliant fact on the ungrateful audience of episode 20. They don't deserve this. That's really interesting. So the Beatles, wow. Oh, fantastic.
And he won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1979 for that.
I'm not shocked. Yeah. And so, so it really was only like 6 years later.
Exactly. I mean, yeah.
To be fair, like if you saw this in your local hospital, I think all of us would be thinking, like, I've quickly got to come up with a better answer to it.
yeah. These screaming people in a torture chair, and you can imagine probably quite often maybe when they were trying to control the chair, it maybe got a bit out of control and started going in the wrong directions and stuff
Oh,
like
yeah,
that. Going,
absolutely. Yeah.
Like, yeah, zooming around.
Which actually, one thing I do want to touch upon before we finish is the sound in this segment is absolutely stellar. You rightly pointed out that the funk. So at one point, Michael himself controls the chair with Felix in, and he even says, "What was this fantastic quote, which I really adore? Felix is now where I want him," he says. But like the sounds of the controls are brilliant, but the actual button, as you rightly point out, that he presses to make the X-ray pop is a absolutely tremendous thunk.
It's a real thunk.
Real powerful guttural thunk. And for me, at the beginning, there's a scene where he's taken out of he's unstrapped from the chair by Betty, and you then have a close-up of his leather loafers, his slip-on loafers, and then we see his feet come in. There's a brilliant creak of leather, but there's a wonderful double thump as his feet actually pop in. This was
is that Foley? Is that Foley, or did his feet really make that noise when you put your shoes on?
I'm not certain, because at various points I've assumed it has been. So earlier you were saying when he's on the actually I don't know if we talked about it, but we certainly wrote in the notes when he's on the boat which has all the boulders in that are going to help mark the boundary of the new island so that they can fire the sand in. I don't know if we discussed it, because there's a long shot where he's on the end of the boat and the audio quality is really good. To my ear and my eye, that was not ADR'd. It was not ADR. I assumed it was, but the more I looked, and as I said, we watched these several times, it's not ADR'd. It really is picking up his audio. I think they may be real.
I can imagine Rod also chooses his shoes by the sound they make as well.
I think you're 100% correct on that.
Real stickler for detail.
Yeah, he definitely is. Yeah, thump.
It's like the sound of tennis ball being launched, isn't it? It's like that sort of.
Oh yeah, that kind of satisfying.
What is that? What is something so satisfying? I don't know why it's so satisfying, that noise. Something coming out of a closely fitting tube or going into a closely fitting tube is just
visually, orally. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I enjoyed it, but I think one of the most satisfying images in cinema is in the Return of the Jedi, when the Millennium Falcon leaves the exploding tube after it's blown up the Death Star. The timing of it, leaving that tube, followed then by the flames that almost envelop it, is really satisfying. As satisfying as the incredible sound of, you're right, a tennis ball being delivered. It's just, I don't know what it is about. Well, I've discussed before this podcast my childhood obsession with the incredible way that Postman Pat's van fitted perfectly in the hedge. Yeah. And actually, I've learned something new. I meant to discuss it before, but there's a guy on Twitter I follow, and he started a new blog, and he's revealing the 100 most broadcast shows on BBC One and BBC Two in the history of the BBC from, was it 1937 to 2021? And it's really interesting. He's a really good writer, and he has done, a bit like us, he has done far too much work for not enough return, and that is what makes it brilliant. But he revealed something I didn't know, which is that Postman Pat, obviously, we grew up watching Postman Pat. The first series came out, I think it was in 1985 or something like that. But 1982. So all throughout our childhood, until we were 14, there were only 13 and a half episodes of Postman Pat ever made. In our head, it was this gargantuan program. It's like, no, it was the same episodes over and over again. And I say 13 and a half because there was a Christmas special that they kind of created randomly at one point. And then in 1995, I think there was a second series of more. But of course, at that point, we'd already
nowhere near as good.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the more you look at these, like every program we watched as a child only had 13 episodes.
What really makes me laugh is the it's turned into a bit of a meme that I see prop up quite a lot now, and somebody's made a gif of it. Is Postman Pat stuck in a tree? Have you seen that?
I've not seen that, no.
just type Postman Pat stuck in tree on it.
You said that so sadly. I just type in Postman Pat stuck in a tree.
And who is it? It's not Ted Glenn. I forget the names of the other people in Green.
Ted Glenn was the farmer, wasn't he?
It's the other fella with the moustache. Is it Alf Thompson? I think it's Alf Thompson. Yeah, it's Alf Thompson. Alf Thompson Pat's stuck in the hollow of a tree.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to
bent
add that to
over
Instagram
with his
now, haven't I?
with,
Oh
with
my
the seat of his
God.
trousers ripped off, and then Alf Thompson turns up trying to free him.
Oh my God, there's an entire gangbang later on. Oh my God.
They must have known what they were doing when they made that one, surely.
All right, I'll add that to the Instagram and Twitter account, assuming I'm allowed to, because that's just pure filth.
This is the wonder child of a strange marriage of science and art, the magical centerpiece of a museum at Eindhoven. Certainly the most obedient sculpture in Holland. It's called the censter. The censter listens to your every word, watches your every move. It comes to you when you call it or make encouraging noises. But the censter's discriminating too. If your summons is vulgar or violent, the censter's creator conceived a sculpture with movement as subtle as a mobile, but allowing a high degree of control. He seems to have achieved it. In short, in the language of artistic technology, the censter should react to its environment purposefully but unpredictably. Inspiration came from the claw of a lobster, with its 6 articulated joints giving virtually random movement. So the sculptor fashioned 6 hydraulic rams along a tapering arm and injected oil into its veins. And these are its ears, 4 microphones, always alert, always listening. The censter wears its eyes like horns on its head, twin radar scanners that see the waving hand or the beckoning finger. It's programmed to respond to moderate sound and gentle gesture, get loud or violent, and its brain warns it to cringe away. And that brain is, of course, a computer. So the censter senses. A tenth of a second and 150,000 calculations later, its brain commands. And this sculpture even thinks aloud, if you listen hard enough. But for all its sophisticated intelligence, what it likes more than anything else is a simple serenade.
Wat doe je in mijn hoofd? Je maakt alle bloempjes af en maakt het veel te grof. Oh, mijn lieve mamaatje, zeg niet aan papaatje. Ik zal zoet naar school toe gaan en de bloemetjes laten staan. Klein, klein kleutertje, wat doe je in mijn hoofd? Je plukt er alle bloempjes af en maakt het veel te grof. Oh, mijn lieve mamaatje, zeg het niet tegen papaatje. Ik zal zoet naar school toe gaan en alle bloemetjes laten staan.
We seem to have almost accidentally started a tradition of having crap robots on this program. But actually, I think we're going to slightly disagree on this one, because although I think it's crap as a robot, I actually found it quite interesting as a piece of art, if you see what I mean. For 1973, I think that's quite an interesting sort of exhibit there. I don't think it's a particularly good piece of technology, but I just think the way that it's the reactions it's eliciting and the sort of the way it moves, I think is that I was quite impressed by it in a weird way.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas
I know you weren't at all. You thought
No, I was really
bollocks.
unconvinced. There were 2 reasons why. We land with you because you have a more positive view. And I when I saw your notes, I did see what you meant. That sounds patronising. I understood what you were saying, actually, which I thought was, and you made a good observation. I was unconvinced for 2 reasons. One, I really don't think Tomorrow's World is a place for art. So it felt like filler. And the reason I say that is because I was also unconvinced that it was actually doing what Rod says it does. And the idea is that, you know, it has quote-unquote eyes and has quote-unquote ears, and it responds to verbal and oral stimuli, and its brain, which is, of course, a computer, is able to differentiate between threatening behaviour and welcoming behaviour. And it made me think of Les from Vickery's Big Night Out.
There is a bit where it almost sticks its arms out and pulls away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it really, really
You know,
did. You were right. It was really Les-like.
The
Like
way
somebody just shoved some chives in its face.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's okay because here's somebody with a spirit level. And now, but the thing was, I just was not convinced that was in any way an accurate description. I believe that was what the artist was pretending it was. But I think that's bullshit. I actually don't think he's doing that at all. I didn't see any evidence. And there was a couple of things that really struck me as indicating that it just wasn't true. One was the fact that we see its brain, which is, of course, a computer. And it literally, the first word we see it print is the word random. Now, I know you've done a really good job of translating the whole spiel, but it literally types out the word random, which kind of indicates possibly pre-programmed behavior. And then the other thing is, I think, and it was this line in particular really struck me. The sensor should react to its environment purposefully but unpredictably, which sounds like absolute bumf, designed to persuade people reading the text that what it's seeing is deliberate when in fact it's not. And that combined with what we saw means that it's I just don't believe it. I that's the thing. And it's like I think maybe I was wrong earlier. Like there is a place for art in tomorrow's world, but ultimately to me it's about technology and engineering and developing things for the future and so on and so forth. And then the other thing that really upset me is like, you know, because I started thinking this thing is like Les from Vic Reed, it was like ultimately
why have they not put it in a white lab coat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like a rack of like 12 biros. You know, because there's only so much the human heart can take before it bursts with sadness for us. Because ultimately, the horrible people of Eindhoven are just torturing this damn thing. If it is actually as responsive as this guy says, it is being tortured. So that's my view.
Yeah, but that was the thing. But it was sort of eliciting that response from me. That's the thing.
Yeah, and that's what your observation was. Actually, the art is more about the people than it is the object.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think you are right in those observations, but I think those observations are what makes the art work. In that it is doing something which is being interpreted by its audience as something which it actually isn't doing itself. It is the interpretation that is creating the intent in the people's...
Yes. Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No, I do. No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think you are right. I think that alone means that the way that this segment is presented means it's inappropriate for tomorrow's world. Because that is what you should be talking about. We're about to go on to a segment where the way it should have been done is what we'll be discussing in order to very carefully discuss how they've done something. And this is a precursor that was like, I think if the segment had been about this being a piece of art that was actually about revealing how people respond if they're told things behave in a certain way, would be really interesting. And I think you're right. I think ultimately that is what it is about. It is about man's inhumanity to inhumans. But we saw that earlier with the pigs. But just Rod would not recognise. He said full of cognitive dissonance. Yeah, but we're not. We're told that this is future tech, basically. This is like AI is basically what we're told. And of course it just cannot be true.
No, but I mean, it's the closest thing we have to Hal in this episode, isn't it? I mean,
is that you pitching for a box tick later on, Ross?
No, I'll just say. But like I said, the code readouts, presumably as the code is being processed, it's being printed out on a teleprinter, and we can see as it's going.
I was half expecting Barclays League Division 1 scores to come out.
Yeah. Weirdly, I mean, well, I wouldn't say weirdly because I suppose it's in a Dutch museum, but the code is in Dutch, but I don't think any computer code is in Dutch, so I don't know, So I think this might all be for show,
but pretense as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If you translate the Dutch code into English, it comes out.
So before you translate it, can you read it out in Dutch?
Okay, code niet rekend a asterisk random ff reg moog en moeien.
Beautiful. Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, which translates as code not calculated, a random ff reg may be in trouble. So is that meant to? Do you think that's meant to be transcripting the fears on the mind of the robot? So it's thinking someone's just shouted at me, I may be in trouble, or is that the machine just giving a error readout because it's not functioning correctly?
Having thought about it, I'm very much in your camp, which is that it is obviously this is a tone poem about. The artist knew that if you pretend you created something that recoils from abhorrent behavior, that people will be abhorrent to see the reaction. If a tooth is loose or we have a wisdom tooth coming through, we can't stop poking it. We have to see, you feel alive when you're inflicting agony on something that you don't have to empathize about. I am very much persuaded by your idea that the Vidi printer is printing out, because it must be on display somewhere. It's there for people to see, and it's there to make the statement that this crab claw arm is feeling pain. And equally later on, Rod tries to convince us that these two women who are singing to the arm are providing it with the kind of positive reinforcement, the positive stimulus that it's drawn towards, and yet the arm won't stop fucking moving to the point where they seem threatened and they have to keep moving around.
At one point, it nearly scrapes her eye out. And she has some evasive manoeuvres.
I was really, really trying to capture an image to share of like the sheer shock in her face, and maybe now that we discussed it, I might be able to add it in, because the thing is, it was by the point she looked shocked and scared, the arm was already out of off screen. Yeah. So maybe I might be able to add it now that we explained it. But like, it was quite striking how dangerous it was, because they were chasing it down basically.
Yeah, but that is a lovely little tune that they were singing to her.
It's beautiful, Ross.
Today.
Absolutely beautiful. Can you tell us anything about it?
Earworm. It's called Klein Klittiger.
Klein Klittiger.
Klein Klittiger. That, obviously I found the translation. It's a traditional Dutch nursery rhyme.
Felt like a nursery rhyme, yeah.
Unknown origin. First recorded in 1843, but probably older than that. But in English, the lyrics go thus. Little toddler, what are you doing in my garden? You are picking all my flowers and overdoing it. Second verse. Oh, my dear mummy, please don't tell daddy. I will go to school now and leave your flowers. So there you go.
Hang on a minute. Sorry. So, little toddler, what are you doing in my garden? You're plucking flowers. You've gone too far. I'm paraphrasing.
You're overdoing it.
You're overdoing it. Sorry, which is much better.
Yeah.
And then the little toddler that this woman professes not to recognise is actually their child.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. Who should be at school despite being a toddler.
Yep.
Okay. All right. They're way ahead of us, those Dutch, aren't they? Absolutely. They're way ahead of us.
Well, it's because they're so tall. They have to go to school earlier.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. What you just said then.
Because school's done by height rather than age.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a whole different meaning for big school over in Holland, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so this
you're overdoing it. Brilliant.
I would have to say the one best thing to come out of this is my discovery of the museum that this was being exhibited in. There's no exterior shot of it. This is one of those things that you probably know all about, Mark, because you like architecture and things like that. But if you scroll to the bottom of our shared documents,
I've seen it. Yes.
Have you ever seen that building before?
I recognise it, but I would never have I would never have thought that was like a museum in Eindhoven. I've seen
so that is the Evoluon.
Yeah.
It was built by Philips. On my second favourite electronics company after Russell Hobbs.
Well, I know Philips are based in Eindhoven because there's a football club called PSV Eindhoven.
Well, I was about to tell
Philips
you that
Sporting Vitesse, I believe.
I also learnt this yesterday.
Yes. Oh!
It's about the only interesting football fact I've ever heard in my life. That they invented the PSV Eindhoven. It was originally a Philips.
It's a sporting club from the Philips company, or was, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Along with Wolfsburg in Germany, they were the traditional Volkswagen football club. Yeah, absolutely. Philips Sporting Vitesse.
But Philips, who I think in terms of the amount of recognition they get, they don't get enough recognition for the amount of stuff that they've been involved in. As I said at the beginning of the programme, they invented the music cassette.
When you said that the Dutch invented the music cassette, the CD, was it the Blu-ray, the Laserdisc? I assumed,
and the DVD.
And the DVD.
Yeah.
I assumed you must have been talking about Philips.
Yeah. So, all of this. And I think people probably just associate them with light bulbs and shavers, really. But
true.
But they've got all of this other stuff behind them. They are still the world's biggest maker of light bulbs, actually. But they don't really make much electronics equipment anymore. They just do make medical equipment these days, apparently.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I mean, Hardly a drop down.
No. But that does obviously.
Those isocentric chairs won't make themselves.
yeah. That obviously has left the field clear for Russell Hobbs to absolutely clean up the field.
The way you said that, I think in your head you imagined one of those kind of wrens kind of moving pieces across a giant kind of table with a map
the field
of
of
Europe
electronics.
on it. Yeah.
But yeah, so this building, as I said, the building this is in, everybody please Google it, or we'll put up a picture of it or something like that.
I can share the picture, yeah. Eindhoven Museum, yeah.
It's called the Evoluon. It was built in 1966 by a science museum by Philips. And it's amazing. It looks exactly like a flying saucer.
It's incredible.
It's no longer a science museum, unfortunately. In 1998, they turned it into a conference centre.
Oh.
I think you can still go and have a look around if you want. But
I have to say, if I knew that was around, I might have been persuaded to kind of drag us down to Eindhoven to see this.
Yeah.
Having said that, I really enjoyed the bleak beaches of The Hague.
It's all right, Mark. I'll let you come over and visit me again next time if you want.
Thanks.
This exhibit, this thing, is called the Senster. And it either stands for sensitive monster or sensual monster. I found two different references to it. I would say sensitive. That makes more sense than sensual, doesn't it?
It's not sexual.
It's not going to give you a back rub, is it?
It's not seductive in any way whatsoever.
No.
Yeah.
It was designed by a sculptor called Edward Ignatowicz, who was Polish. But he lived and worked in London. Although he was born in 1926, he was a robot artist. That was his thing. So as far as I could tell, he only created 3 works of art in his life, and all 3 of them were robots. This was the middle one. The first one was called Sam. This one was called Senster, and then the third one was called The Bandit. Didn't look anything like Burt Reynolds, so I was very disappointed. It was some sort of one-arm bandit style thing. It professed that if you pulled the one arm on it, it would measure the way you pulled it and then work out what sex you are and what mood you're in.
Well, that sounds like nonsense as well. Yeah.
But this was his big success. He was on display in this museum for between 1970 and 1974, and then it got dismantled. But the company that built it, so it's built by it's welded together out of like steel tubing and hydraulic rams and things like that. And the company that put it together was based somewhere in the west of Holland. So they went, we'll have that and we'll put it up in our front garden. Not front garden. What does a business have? Doesn't have a front garden, does it? Whatever the front area of businesses.
Yep.
You know, the verge outside the car park.
Yeah.
So they put it up there for years and years. And it was only until 2018, some Polish scientists at university in Krakow. Is it Krakow or Krakow?
I think it's Krakow, yeah.
Krakow.
Yeah.
In Krakow, they rediscovered it and went, let's bring it back to life. So they have. So they've brought it. So they went over there, took it off their hands and recommissioned it and put some new. So the original computer that was running it. So there was a computer attached to it. It was the size of a refrigerator and it had 8 kilobytes of memory. So it's a real absolute, powerhouse of a computer.
Yeah.
They've replaced that with a modern processor. So it's probably like a birthday card or something. So that's powering it. But weirdly, they said that the new one, and I thought this was interesting, because the original one claimed that it ran on both radar and sound, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Yeah,
when we're describing it. The
Not
new
explicitly,
version,
but that's what it is. Yeah.
The new version, which apparently has updated electronics in it, doesn't have the radar in it. It only has the sound in it, which makes me wonder whether it ever had the radar in it, or whether that's actually proof. That's proof that it actually was only possibly reacted to sound.
I have to say,
if at all.
It makes so much more sense. It only really had microphones in it.
Yeah. Because the idea of I don't know, the idea of having little radar, I don't know. I mean,
but even then, let's think this out. I hadn't even thought about that. So it has the 2 little radar dishes, kind of like a half a meter apart on little bits sticking out like antenna. The idea that radar would be sophisticated enough, because Rod himself says he says the beckoning finger. There's no way that radar would be able to.
No,
subtly,
it wouldn't, would it?
No, that's nonsense. It doesn't have radar. It does have microphones. I don't doubt that whatsoever, because it needs to move. Obviously, if there's no one there.
Yeah, it needs to stop when there's no one there.
Yeah, and where there's no sound, it has to stop. But that's it, though. I think once there's sound, it probably is moderately random.
Yeah, that makes sense.
BBC
well, I think we've bust this case wide open.
Oh, should we move on to the next big case?
Yeah, but if you want to see that,
so it's in Krakow.
It's in Warsaw at the moment.
Warsaw.
It's at the last spotted at the Zagieta Art Gallery in Warsaw in 2021. So I guess it's probably still there. I kind of
would like to see it, bizarrely.
Yeah, go out there and be really quiet and move around, or be just really test it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and learn that song about the plant destroying toddler.
Plant destroying toddler, why are you in my...
Please don't tell my dad I'm not at school.
Right, last section.
Gosh, shall we?
Yeah.
These are the beech woods near Arnhem. By the main road on the edge of the town lies a village. It looks like any modern estate, but it's more than that. Everyone living here is severely handicapped. Number 25, Rodderdam, early on a wintry Wednesday morning. This is Mrs. Dimpf Sabers. She is 43. She suffers from multiple sclerosis, the progressive disease which attacks the nerve fibres. She was a chemical analyst until she could no longer trust her hands. That was 10 years ago. This is her husband, already on his way to work. Leo Sabers is 46. He has muscular dystrophy, the wasting disease of the muscle tissue. It's progressive, probably hereditary, and incurable. Leo works in the village post office. He'd been a postal worker before he came to the village. Now he works from a wheelchair. At 10:30, Dimpf leaves for her work, travelling into Arnhem 4 days a week to type reports for a big chemical firm. There are 400 people like the Sabers in the village. The place is state-supported, but the villagers themselves decided that they should contribute towards their upkeep. So now they pay a proportion of what they're able to earn. The village has a philosophy of its own, and this financial self-help is part of it. The whole idea is that the village shouldn't be set apart, should not be some sort of disabled ghetto, but integrated into the community at large. Leo puts in a full working week behind the post office counter, and he works alone. But the post office is not just for the handicapped. Anyone can use it, and they do. When the village was first built, local residents of Arnhem said they wanted a tree screen. They didn't want to see wheelchairs all day. They changed their minds, apologized, and now mix happily with their neighbors. Half of the residents are able to work, and most of those work in the village.
Ja, dat is wel jammer. Hoeveel is dat? 1 gulden. 1 gulden? Ja. Hier komen. Ja. Wat zei je nou?
So Leo is helping to run the village efficiently.
Het is de democratische wil van de...
Many of his neighbors, most of them spastics, make braille books for the blind, one handicapped community helping another. To the foreigner, the village is amazing and touching, but one feels sympathy, not pity, admiration for the courage that's made the place work, the determination that raised nearly £3 million in a day-long radio and television appeal to get the village started. Four o'clock. Dimpf, back from Arnhem, does the weekly shopping. The supermarket is part of the village, but again, anyone may use it, handicapped or not. Apart from wider passageways and automatic doors, a shop like any other. By this time, Leo has closed up the post office and returned home, but he can't get away from stamps, even in his own living room.
When I first watched this segment, Mark, this episode, I genuinely thought that last segment was about the length of half of the programme. It seemed to go on for absolutely forever. Not because it was... I didn't find it boring. It was just an incredibly in-depth segment, I think. But actually watching it again, I don't think it did go on for that long. I think maybe it was just I spent the whole thing in terror of Michael Rodd saying something spectacularly inappropriate. It just felt like it went on for longer than it did. I don't know.
I feel very comfortable saying that this is the most I've written about any segment we've ever watched in our notes. And the thing is, I stopped halfway through. And I'm going to be really interested to know how much of this segment you include in the episode when you edit this all together. Because on the one hand, I agree with you totally. It felt so long because it does feel really detailed. But it feels really long because you're watching it with your eyes and mouth and ears behind your hand, cowering at what you hope doesn't happen, but obviously is inevitable. And the weird thing, though, is that like you only need to put in half to give a flavour, because it then kind of goes on to make the same point. Not the point he thinks he's making, but the same point over and over again. And it just gets worse and worse and more stock. And I think, so what did I write first? Oh yeah, when I first watched this, a cold sweat drove across my body when Rod says, "Everyone living here is severely handicapped." My face dropped. I feared the absolute worst. So I was pleasantly surprised when my fears weren't initially realised, but I was right to trust my instinct.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, previously when we were talking about Censter, I think what we both agreed was that there was a really good segment there that focuses on what is actually happening, and it would be really fascinating if they present it in a way that Censter, if, as we suggest, specifically you suggest, that Censter isn't really about the object itself, but how people respond to it, then that would be a really fascinating exploration for Tomorrow's World to take. With this segment, I think it's very clear to both of us when we were watching, especially over multiple times, how there is something really interesting and profound to say about this particular village. But the reality of what we see says so much more, and not what they designed, not what they thought they were saying. And it's at times laughable, and at times really uncomfortable. And one of the other things, and I know we still haven't started talking about it, and so forgive me, but one of the other things that struck me that I said in the notes is like, it's actually kind of surprising, perhaps, that we haven't come across too much on Tomorrow's World that feels so divorced from our time in terms of presentation or language or viewpoints or morals. You know, we pseudo joke about cruel farmers.
But we still eat tasty bacon.
But we still eat tasty bacon. And this strikes me as the first segment that we've seen that I really find uncomfortable. Despite the fact that it's showing us something brilliant, I find very uncomfortable to watch. And and I've watched it 3 times now. And we're about to discuss it. I don't know. The thing is, I don't want to. I'm not virtue signaling here. I'm not gonna say that like I'm so uncomfortable that I think we should just move on. Not at all. We're gonna have a really good conversation about this. It's absolutely fascinating. It's incredible to watch, because at the heart of it, I just think it seems to reveal a lot about how things were perceived at the time. Funnily enough, not just in Britain, but clearly in Holland as well, which is absolutely fascinating. Where do we start with this?
The thing I think is weird is that presumably Second World War is only 25 years before this, or 30 years before this, whatever. Presumably the amount of people who must have come back from the Second World War with missing legs, or various whatever disability, there must have been hundreds, thousands of people with disabilities. So I don't understand. And apparently I looked up that the electric wheelchair was invented in 1953 by somebody who wanted to make sure that people could get around, war veterans could get around. So it must have been completely normal for people to see people in wheelchairs, surely. So I don't understand why there is this sense, and it's that I think the absolute problem that pervades this entire segment is that there is never a sense that this is entirely positive. Everything is always couched in the suffering, the eternal suffering and damnation that these disabled people will suffer that will never be cured, but we are making the best of it, sort of thing.
Yes, and I really feel the need to just kind of very quickly pass what it is that we're talking about, which is that through a charitable process, £3 million were raised, which is a huge amount of money.
Let me just tell you this. So in order to fund this, there was one of the most famous television programmes in Dutch history. It was called Open Het Dorp, which means open the village.
Yep.
And Het Dorp is what this is called, the village.
Yep.
Nothing to do with them like Shyamalan. Would have made a much more interesting film. But it was the first ever fundraising show in the Netherlands in 1962. 26th and 27th of November 1962. It was a 23-hour telethon, and like it had basically every possible Dutch celebrity on it, and people would collect the... Yeah, DJ Sven and MC Micah, all of them.
Rutger's dad,
Rutger Hauer, everyone. the Wenger boys, his grandmum, mother.
Mrs. Wenger.
Yeah, but people got like these small little matchboxes and filled them with money and took them to the local corner shop. And by the end of the campaign, by the end of the 23 hours, they'd raised 21 million guilders, which I put through the inflation machine. In today's money, is £55 million.
Wow.
So, yeah.
In 2 days,
and that's
incredible.
In 1 day, 23 hours, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 23 hours, sorry. Cross.
And that paid for Het Dorp.
And that was a population of...
That built this whole thing.
12 million.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So that's super impressive.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And so that money goes towards building. I mean, he calls it a village, but the reality is, like, because the Holland is so small, like it's a council estate, really.
Yeah, it's a council estate on the edge of Arnhem.
But it's a accessible council estate. That all it is basically just they've designed this council estate with wheelchairs in mind. That's it. And I don't mean to belittle what they've done, but like it shouldn't be revolutionary. And throughout all this, throughout Rod's script, there is a patronizing wonder that these people are able to contribute, when the reality is like Leo and Dimf are physically disabled, but like what was it? Dimf was an academic, and Leo did some other jobs. Like all this shows that like if you provide people the ability to contribute to society, they will damn well contribute to society. And the whole thing is a shock to, I don't want to say Rod, that's unfair. Well, to be fair, I assume he wrote this, but like the script is in shock and awe that these two pitiful people are able to contribute in any way. One thing is like, so Leo runs the local post office. As I said, so here's the quote. Leo puts in a full working week behind the post office counter and he works alone. And as I said to you, you're literally describing a job. That's a job. That's a fucking job. And not just that, it's like, I would imagine most village post office, we call them postmasters here, it's non-gender specific. Most of them work alone. That is, you're literally describing...
It's not really a two-man job,
it's
is it?
not a two-man job, no. You open at 9, you close at 4, boom. You're talking about a job. The only thing is, like, he says he works a full working week behind the post office counter. The only difference is that counter is slightly lower. It just hurts my head. And then it goes on to say that the post office is not just for the handicapped. Anyone can use it, and they do. Because it's the fucking post office.
That's the thing. Like, imagine how inefficient it was if they had to have separate post offices for able-bodied and disabled people.
You made this point. I was like, I wrote this entire 1,000-word screed, and you made this wonderful point, which is like, the alternative is segregated villages in which the able-bodied are going out of their way to not go to the post office. And the sad thing is, like, this is dressed up as being so progressive. And the thing is, like, it is, because it recognizes the fact that if you make aisles in supermarkets wider and you make counters in post offices lower, everyone gets to be a part of society, and they all get to be able to live their lives independently and contribute. And which is most people in society just want everyone to contribute. We all want to feel like we're all pulling on the same rope and progress is at the end of it. And what is Rod's quote about the very partridge he goes? Oh yeah, here we go. To the foreigner, the village is amazing and touching, but one feels sympathy, not pity. And that is so striking. That is so shocking. It's such a shocking thing to say.
And the way he says it is he's definitely feeling pity.
He's definitely feeling pity. Absolutely. And the thing is, I said, like, they're physically disabled. That it's very sad that they are. But there's literally no barrier to their intellect.
No. I take issue with the fact he calls them severely handicapped.
Yeah,
as
he
well.
does. You're absolutely right.
To me, severely handicapped is like you're on an iron lung, or maybe like Stephen Hawking, where he can't actually barely move. Really, yeah. He was like, so that to me is these people. They were just in wheelchairs, pretty much.
That's it.
Other than being in a wheelchair, they could. I mean, Leo, the fellow one, he could even get out of his wheelchair if he needed to.
Yeah.
That is not, to me, that's not severely handicapped.
Nope.
And I was thinking, like, going back to they must have seen loads of people who'd lost limbs in the war. Is it because these people have muscular dystrophy? So rather than them becoming disabled later in life as the result of an accident, because they are born with it, has that sort of clouded the attitude towards them?
One is heroic and the other is a curse.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Like there's good AIDS and bad AIDS to kind of
Yeah,
talk about
exactly,
brass
yeah,
eye,
yeah.
and I'm not
Yeah.
trying to belittle it, but like that's how it felt to me. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you got bad AIDS, not good.
Yeah,
AIDS.
exactly. That exactly.
absolutely,
That's what I sensed from it. That sort
yeah,
of...
there is that sense like, God's cursed you. It's like, as opposed to like a noble sacrifice. You literally put your body in the line for the future of Holland. Where it's like you've lost the genetic lottery. What is really interesting, I mean, because there's another thing, and I don't know how, we're just going to chop and change between all the different segments. After that bit about the post office being available to everyone, and the shocking fact that actually everyone uses it, which is literally the whole point of this place. The whole point of this place is that it's supposed to be integrating into society. Right? They literally made that point. This is not some sort of disabled ghetto, but it's integrated into the community at large. That point is made twice. So why they're shocked that the community at large utilizes these resources is beyond me. But then there is a line which I think gives the game away, and it's like, I suppose in one sense it's a relief to know that the Netherlands wasn't necessarily horrifically more progressive than Britain at the time, because when the village was first built, local residents of Arnhem wanted a tree screen. They didn't want to see wheelchairs all day. But they changed their mind, apologized, and now mix happily with their neighbours.
What the hell's going on there?
What is that about?
I mean,
this from a nation apparently who are happy to build factories or beaches, but they don't want to see wheelchairs happily trundling.
One of the most famously tolerant nations on earth.
Isn't that amazing? That blew my mind.
What is wrong with the wheel? Bizarre.
Perhaps the only good thing is that they recognised how crap that was and apologised.
Shocking.
Oh, and we're not even discussing the some of the terms, some of the time-appropriate phraseology Rod employs that nowadays are best left unsaid. But you can, I think, Russ, I'm going to give you permission because I think you make a really good point about the word spastic, which is that... Obviously,
the word spastics, right?
Yeah, which Rod uses. Yeah.
It explodes from his mouth.
It feels so hateful, and it's so unpleasant to listen to. But of course, it was, cerebral palsy. They were called spastics. Spastic Society.
Spastic Society. Yeah.
Every charity shop was.
But I always think that kind of took off as the go-to derogatory word.
Yes,
but I think the reason it's more of a linguistic thing, isn't it? It's because it's spastic. Like it explodes out of your mouth, like in a way.
It can only be said with venom.
Exactly.
With propulsion, with it's not a softly spoken word.
Yeah. I mean, I said I feel equally about the word Spaniard, even though I don't believe that's in any way offensive at all. You Spaniard, like it just kind of like
Spanish practices.
So you can kind of see why it took off as a horrible way to describe somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as the shortened version. I don't know. This whole piece though, it's just the really heartbreaking thing about the whole piece is that like it's just it's just a script rewrite away from being really positive. And I think really valuable, because at the heart of it, it's showing a bit of public investment and a little bit of smart thinking can mean that everyone gets to be a part of society. And then if you don't do this, don't think about wheelchairs when you're building a post office or a supermarket, you are excluding people. And if you're aware that doing the same thing over and over again means that people in wheelchairs are excluded, you are deliberately excluding them. So how about we think a little bit harder, and next time a housing estate is built, we think about disability access, because you provide people the opportunities, they grab them and they contribute. And isn't that all we ever really want from our peers? Is just for everyone to be contributing to society and driving us forward. But that's not what this does. This is in shock.
The only reason it doesn't is because if you stripped the voiceover out of this, it would be entirely positive. There's nothing
100% correct. 100%
there's nothing in the visuals.
Yeah, the
which
imagery
is
all positive. Yeah.
Everything we see is...
We see Dimf and Leo off to work.
Dimf and Leo having a great time.
Living in their house together.
Living
shopping,
absolutely. Living their best lives.
In fact,
everything's going
if there was
great.
no voiceover, I'd wonder what they were showing us.
Yeah. It's only Rod continually bringing them down with, they're doomed for life, but at least they're doing their best.
You made a really good point. He cannot stop talking about how their ailments are uncurable.
Yeah.
And the point being, I suppose, it's not. It's like, gosh, they're so cursed that there's no getting out of this. Like, if they were normal, they'd be able to be out of their wheelchairs in a few years' time. But not these guys.
No.
Tarnished. Oh, it's awful. It's so dreadful.
Do you know how much we've got to blame Rod about for this? I don't know how much it's his.
Well, I assume he wrote the script. I'm gonna land in that. I assume he wrote the script, and it's very, very Partridge in the sense that, as I said to you, it's like he thinks he's being really positive, but he's revealing just how mean and negative he is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought as well.
Absolutely wonderful. The other really brilliant bit of Partridge in it is when Dimph, the wife, is out shopping, miraculously, somehow she's able to shop in a supermarket that is designed to accept wheelchairs. And still, normal people go. Can you believe that, Russ? Leo's at home. He's just finished one of his 5 days a week because he's working a normal job.
Yeah.
And he is, and I'm going to say, by this time, Leo has closed up the post office and returned home, but he can't get away from stamps, even in his own living room. Cut to Leo, putting stamps in an album. The only thing that stops it being proper Partridge is him saying something like, because he's a philatelist, ... a stamp collector. It's like, because Partridge really would drive home the fact that he spots something and he expects you not to have missed it. That I really enjoyed that, and you made a really good point.
Yeah.
Do we think Leo bought those stamps?
I don't think he did.
Or did he lift them?
I mean, he's all alone in that post office, so
yes, he is. Yeah.
So he can stuff as many down the side cushion of his wheelchair as he likes before he wheels out of the office there.
Which actually, sorry, before we move on to possibly flog a dead horse and continue to talk about how uncomfortable this whole segment, can you, because you blew my mind, because you sent me, shockingly, I believe, thanks to you and your horrendous eBay habit, on my shelf here to my right, I believe, and you email in to tomorrowsworldallthetime@gmail.com if you think otherwise. I believe I am now the possessor of Britain's, if not the world's, greatest collection of Tomorrow's World official books. Because you went on a binge buying
a drunken eBay binge. It turns out there's a lot of them on eBay at any one time, so
not anymore. I was
able to buy the lot.
But the thing is, I think the first one you got delivered to your house, and then you sent it to me. And the thing that really gassed my flabber was there wasn't a stamp on it. What I recognised was your horrific scrawlings in the top right. Can you, for those who are not aware, what in God's name do they do in the Netherlands to send stuff through the post?
So this I think this is...
And Leo would be turning in his wheelchair at the the fact that there aren't stamps anymore. Sorry, go on.
This is such a great idea. So you can buy postage online, right? No surprise there. This is the 21st century. But obviously, as we talked about last time, no one's got a working printer at home, unless they've got a laser printer like me. But other than that, no one's printer ever works. So what are you going to do to print out the barcode or whatever it is when you've bought this postage at home? Well, the Dutch have come up with a solution which I'd never seen anywhere else, and I think is absolutely ingenious. All you need to do, so when you buy the postage, it will then show you is it 6x6 or 3x3?
3x3. It was 9 squares.
3x3. It will just show you a 3x3 grid with 9 letters written in it. 9 letters or numbers. Was it numbers?
No, it was in both, yeah.
Yeah, so, and all you do is you get your envelope and you just draw a 3x3 grid on it with a biro, and then you write those letters and numbers in the boxes, the same as the thing you've just bought. And because obviously postal machines can read handwriting, that's how they read addresses, so it's no change there. And that is a unique 9-digit code. And that's it. That's how it works.
Incredible.
So anybody can buy postage online and post a letter because they don't need a printer. It's simplistic genius.
I joked when I said this phrase earlier, but way ahead of us.
Oh, they are way ahead of us.
That is so great. It was one of those things when I looked at it, I thought, how in God's name has, especially your handwriting, Russ, which is not to be, no one would ever be impressed with. So how on earth does this make it here? It's like, then he was like, Mark, let me tell you. And I was so impressed because it made so much sense. It was like, absolutely, that makes I mean, incredible. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Leo would be furious. I was hugely impressed.
Yeah, because you can't really just collect a load of hand-drawn
a random
boxes
box, a random box of 9 letters and numbers. No, it doesn't quite have the same. Doesn't draw the attention, does it?
No, it doesn't have that tactile quality.
No.
One thing about Leo, I just wanted to point out, his name is Leo Sabers, which is
Yes.
remarkably close to Leo Sayer, isn't it? Or the old sailor, as he's known in some quarters. Yeah, that surprised me.
I also wanted to say that I was really struck by Leo as well, because he 46, and he is that most unusual thing in a gentleman of his age on a program from this time, which is that he does not look 46.
No, he doesn't.
Not because he looks 60 like all other 40-year-olds. Because he looks like he's in his 30s. Leo is shockingly youthful looking. Like if
he looks a lot younger than his wife, and his wife's meant to be 3 years younger than him. His wife's meant to be 43.
Oh, and that was something I also would say. Apropos of nothing, dropped in the middle, when she's out shopping, we are told Leo is her second husband because she lost her first. Also to multiple sclerosis, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. No, muscular
dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy, thank you. And I thought that was absolutely unnecessary. It felt like it was just ladling
on the misery.
Yeah, absolutely. Has this woman not suffered enough? It's nonsense. It's like, I'm really sorry she lost her first husband. I'm really glad she's found Leo, and I hope they have a fantastic life together. I'd be shocked if you were able to tell me now what happened to them both.
No, I did try to track them down, but
no luck. And that's do you know what? That is exactly right and proper. But it was so unnecessary. It felt like it was trying to imply that somehow she again going back to the idea that like she's cursed. It's like, no, she isn't. That's just dumb fucking luck.
Yeah.
And that actually really annoyed me more than a lot of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, which you can say was representative of the time. Because the thing about this segment is that this reveals more about 1973 than I think anything else does. We're answering a question we're going to ask in a second, but that just felt so. That's none of our business, and it had nothing to do with this village, and everything to do with
Michael Rod's
prejudice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say one thing. You mentioned her wheeling through the supermarket there.
Yes. Oh.
Very, very prominent bottle of Coca-Cola in her basket.
Thank
Upright
God.
in the centre of the screen, wheeling. It was another of those from the basket shots. And that bottle of Coca-Cola was right there, dead centre.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, bang on.
It seems to be our most consistently advertised products.
Yeah,
I think they might have had a sly long-term sponsorship deal with Tomorrow's World.
That seems highly likely. Anything else we want to talk about?
Oh no, I could tell you about Hetdorp. I've not told you about that yet, have I?
No, you haven't. No, go.
So as I said, it's Dutch for the village. Which one is the village in? Is M. Night Shyamalan's village the one where it all looks like it's set in the past, and then it turns out that they discover a motorway, and it turns out they're all just pretending to live in the past?
Yeah, correct. That's the one. Yeah.
So I thought,
it's brilliant. I love it. One of my favourite films.
So in this version, they would all be in wheelchairs, and then one of them would escape and discover there were people not in wheelchairs. Is that how it would work?
No, it would be that they would escape and realise that there was a world outside not judging them.
But so Hetdorp still there. So it was obviously very successful. It's actually surprising how little there is about it, because it's obviously quite a.
I mean, it seems.
It was the first thing of its kind. It was a man called Uri Klapwijk, who was a doctor specialising in the rehabilitation of disabled people after the war, and he came up with this idea of having this community, and he came up with the idea for this telethon I already told you about. And it was very successful. Like, it did exactly what he set out for it to do, and it's still there. And it was copied by a few different places. There's one in Japan apparently, which is quite similar, because a Japanese actress saw it and she went, "Oh, I'm going to build one of those in Japan." But obviously, time moves on, and it needed updating, so they set out to update it about 10 years ago. But it's taken them a while to get everything sorted. So they started updating it in 2019, a company called Mark Curler Architects, and they're still working on it at the moment. But it's going to be all totally, fully renovated, and there's going to be 84 brand new apartments for everybody. And then around that, there'll be 110 houses. But they're going to... The original one was kind of isolated from the town because, as we saw, the locals didn't want to see wheelchairs. This new one is going to be part of. They're bringing it into there's no division between it and the rest of the town. So it's going to be part of the whole thing.
So despite trying not to make a disabled ghetto, they actually made a disabled ghetto. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. But they're obviously the houses are going to be super high tech, and it's going to be to the point where everything in the house is going to be controllable from an iPad or whatever. And then even if there's people who can't use their hands, they'll be able to control the iPad with their eye gestures.
Cool.
And they'll be able to do everything, open their curtains, turn the microwave on, whatever. Yeah, so it's all looking good. But I was thinking, do you in this day and age, with the amount of technology there is, and, hopefully people's more enlightened attitude to disabled people, we don't really necessarily need segregated sort of villages for disabled people, do we? Surely the idea is just to make sure
Are you saying we don't need disabled ghettos anymore?
yeah. I just feel like we probably don't need any ghettos, really, do you? I don't know. Are there any good ghettos?
You're out of this country. We don't need people like you around here. No, you're not wrong. To me, the whole point of this segment is that if you build things that everyone can use them.
Yeah.
Isn't that it? Isn't it as simple as that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like in a way, I think it's great that they're kind of refurbishing the village and kind of bringing up to speed, because in a sense, it's a celebration of the past idea of progress. Over here it'd probably be listed, so it's like you should kind of invest in it's part of it's part of the history of the Netherlands, and I think that's really, really good. But in general, no, you shouldn't. You should just broadly make as many buildings available to be used by as many people as possible. Just future-proof everything. There is literally no point in designing buildings to be bought by people that exclude people who can buy them.
Weirdly, completely unconnected to this, just a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with somebody about Amsterdam, and we were saying Amsterdam must be one of the least disabled person-friendly cities imaginable. Obviously, you imagine the Dutch to be quite progressive and things like that. It's an absolute minefield for anyone in a wheelchair. You've got the tram lines, you've got all sorts of incredibly uneven surfaces. The only bonus is that it's quite flat, so you don't have hills to contend with. If you're blind, I would not. Being blind in Amsterdam must be an absolute true nightmare, because you're wandering into cycle paths where cyclists don't stop at any point. You could be wandering onto a tram line at any. There's no indication of where you are, and it must be a complete. Yeah, no one. I mean, maybe that's why they want to live off in siphoned off communities, so they're not constantly in fear of being run down. There's no fences around the canals. Like, they're completely open as well. So yeah, I
think that was a really good point, because I suppose it's not one I thought of, but when I went to visit you in April as a hearing person, it took me quite a while to understand the rules of the road, and the fact that as a pedestrian you're way down the pecking list.
Yeah.
In fact, there was one point where you were hit in the back of the head by some kind of angry cyclist.
Oh yeah, because I walked slightly too far into his path.
And I didn't even see it. It was only some northerners behind us who thought it was the funniest thing they'd seen for quite a long time that drew my attention to it, because I would have been absolutely livid. The audacity of the chaps. It's like, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think Amsterdam must be an absolute nightmare. That, and the other thing that wouldn't help blind people is the fact that every goddamn road looks the same as every other. You cross one canal that looks exactly the same as the other. It's so difficult to track where you're going.
And the houses have such steep stairs. I doubt you could get a stanner that goes up that steep. You need a rocket-powered stanner to get up one.
There's not a stanner, lift, or a pig that climb the stairs of any house in Amsterdam.
Well,
very good observation. No, you're absolutely right. It must be very, very difficult, which is probably why they all live in Eindhoven.
Well, I think we've expressed our.
I think we have, yeah, absolutely.
Shall we just have a quick little look at Roddy's summing up?
Roddy's little outro, yeah, summation of the whole thing. I think that'd be nice, wouldn't it? What a great place to end.
And I don't know whether you've ever heard this, Mark. I think they call this the peroration.
Oh gosh, what a great word.
Today in Holland, though there's still plenty of wind about, the windmills turn largely for the benefit of the tourists. Yet it wasn't so very long ago that this flat country depended for its existence on these picturesque machines' ability to pump the water away from the land. But just as the Dutch have made the windmill redundant, so have they involved the rest of their traditional skills, like agriculture, shipbuilding, and reclaiming land from the sea, with some of the very best of modern technology. Holland is a small country. It's only a couple of 100 miles long and 100 miles wide, yet today it controls the world's busiest port and the world's most densely packed population. At the same time, it's a country which openly welcomes immigrants, and it pursues an enlightened and an enviable policy to those who are in any way deprived. The Dutch, it seems, are very clear in their own minds about the contribution they want to make to tomorrow's world.
Well, there we go, Mark. I feel like he...
So what was that word again? Peroration?
Yeah, the peroration there, I think.
You almost sound like you mispronounced that, Russ, but that sounds like a very profound word. Well done thank you for telling me that word.
Peroration's what you need if you want to be a record breaker, I believe.
I think I made that joke as well. Thank you, Russ.
So, despite our attacks on Rod's negativity, I think overall, in his peroration there, he is fundamentally saying that we should be more like the Netherlands. Did you not get that impression?
Generally? No, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that the line, it is a country that openly welcomes immigrants and it pursues an enlightened, enviable policy to those who are in any way deprived.
Yeah.
As I said to you, it's like he's saying there is another way, there is a better way of doing things, which I think is absolutely at the heart of tomorrow's world.
Totally.
There is another way, there is a better way. That is tomorrow's world. And today's world is about getting us into a position where we're in tomorrow's world where things are better.
Yeah.
Better for everyone. That last segment absolutely left a sour taste in my mouth, nose, ears, eyes, and brain testicles. And which is why I was so struck by his outro, where he seems to be, were it not for the fact that we've seen Michael Rodd at various points throughout the next decade, it almost seems like he's a changed man. And I really like that. Like he feels optimistic having been to the Netherlands, because I suppose in many ways, like, think about the Netherlands is that, it's a small but mighty country, but it is surrounded by larger countries that probably have a more colossal cultural footprint. And so in many ways, it's very easy for the Netherlands to decide they will define themselves by not being something.
Yeah.
And by embracing things that are unique, or not unique, but that mark them as being different. And their progressive tolerance is one of those things. Like, I think it's a way of them defining themselves as being different by being better.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that already exists in 1973, and that Rod picks that up, because the subtext to a statement like, it is a country that openly welcomes immigrants and pursues an enlightened and an enviable policy to those who are in any way deprived. Clearly, the subtext has to be ... unlike Britain.
Yeah.
I mean, it has
totally.
to be. Otherwise, why would you mention it?
Yeah.
Britain is not tolerating immigrants. We know that. And clearly it does not have an enlightened and an enviable policy to those who are in any way deprived.
Yeah, just listen to
fact,
my voiceover.
If anything, the engines are stoked by those who are deprived, like shoveling more into the machinery of. I thought it was more profound than he possibly recognises it is, and I wonder what people at home watching thought.
It would have been nice if he delivered that in a cod Dutch accent as well. It's like he'd learnt so much. He'd done like is it Steve McLaren? He did that.
Yes, it is. We're playing Arsenal. It'll be a great in the Champions League. Yeah. It is a country that openly welcomes immigrants. It's a very progressive, enviable policy to those who are in any way deprived. I'm glad to be here in the Netherlands right now.
Yeah,
that's
like
not bad, is it?
Yeah, it's not bad. No.
Yeah, I warmed up to it.
Speaking of the immigrants thing, actually, something I forgot to mention in the beginning. I didn't know this. So, New York famously used to be called New Amsterdam.
I do. Who doesn't love that song?
Turns out, which I did. I don't think. Did I know this? Don't think I knew this. Actually, pretty much the whole of New England used to be called New Netherland.
I have to say, they're very unimaginative with their.
Well, I mean, hang on.
Their nomenclature.
Hang on a minute. When we took it over, we called it New England. So I don't think we can.
Don't point things out there.
So we
make me look stupid.
But yeah, so I think much like it's a similar situation with the Australia thing. They owned it first, and then we just went and took it over from them. But yeah, so New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Connecticut, and parts of Pennsylvania and Rhode Island were all New Netherland. Mm-hmm. But there's a theory that the reason why that part of America is so much more, like historically, so much more tolerant
Oh, you
And-
didn't mention Massachusetts. That makes sense. Carry
So
on.
much more tolerant and open-minded than
Yeah, more of a melting pot
the rest of America, and it's because
because it was Dutch.
it was originally Dutch.
Yeah.
And I thought, that does make sense, doesn't it? Yeah, that does seem to be their
Yeah.
defining characteristic.
Yeah.
Is just not,
Yeah, I would disagree with you with the fact that, you've not mentioned Massachusetts, so you've not mentioned Boston, so you're
Yeah,
point
yeah,
stance.
yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
I see that. I can see that. Yeah, I can see how you. Yeah, I can see that argument.
I think that's.
Oh,
Probably it,
you
isn't it?
wanted to make
I
the
think it's-
point
what?
that he's standing in front of a windmill, which I just took as to be like a classic stereotypical shot. But he basically says that the windmills are just for tourists.
Rod very specifically says that the windmill is redundant.
Redundant,
Yes,
that's the phrase,
redundant
isn't it? Yeah.
technology. Which I mean, don't want to skip ahead to the audit, but that is one of the most inaccurate predictions of the future I could think of. It's a hugely important piece of technology, and I mean, even then, I would imagine there were still windmills powering things. So you got that bit wrong, I'm afraid, Rod.
Oh God.
What are we going to do with you?
What are we going to do, you Rod? Oh, go on, get back to Blighty, Rod. Ultimately, at the beginning, you were saying that like around this time in Tomorrow's World, in this particular epoch of Tomorrow's World, there were quite a lot of episodes that were location specific.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because it would have been like this incredible window into a place that you may not realize that you may actually have the opportunity to go to at some point. So I think there is that sense, isn't it? It's like, an entire episode from Holland is teaching you more about the Netherlands than perhaps you would have learned at all. And that would have been true of how exotic would have an episode of Japan around this time be?
Yeah.
If there is such a thing. Because, I don't understand how you could ever do a program from Japan before Jonathan Ross came of age. Because surely no such thing could possibly exist. Only he could guide us through the chaos. So the fact that at the end of the program, he seems to be implying that there are things that we could all learn from this, I thought was really useful. At times it is patronizing, specifically when it comes to the village. But in general, it's not setting up the Netherlands as being an other or asking you to kind of like laugh at different things. It's like, this is a proper episode of Tomorrow's World, which is saying there are things to be learned here. There are progress is being made, and it's not just in Britain. It's being made elsewhere.
Yeah.
And you know what? We could jolly well learn some lessons here.
Yeah.
Reflect on that. And I have to say, I liked where it ended. I really did.
Definitely.
Actually.
Yeah.
Especially from Rod. Like if that was Willy Wooly, like I would expect it. Because he's a pro, isn't he? Like he's a pro. He's a schmoozer. He's a networker.
Yeah.
But it's like
also,
Rod,
expect him to turn around and walk off with a glamorous
couple of honeys.
under each
Absolutely.
arm.
Jazz cigarettes in all six hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doobies up the wazoozies. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I expect. And then no doubt he has a heart rate monitor because he knows what's happening next. Besides, from Rod, who we enjoy, but he's not. Perhaps he's not Tomorrow's World's greatest thinker. He's clearly gained something from this, and he's sharing it with us. And I like that. I thought it was a good place to end.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And well, speaking of good places to end.
Oh, hey, let's crunch those numbers.
All right, fire it up.
All right, you going to tell us about the year in context, Russ? How about the cinema box office?
Cinema box office. Well, it's an early year.
Year.
All I could do
or what's released
is tell you what was released in the weeks leading up to this episode.
Which is perfect. Thank you very much.
So I just have a mere 5 films to name. On the 1st of January, there was a film called Crossroad, which I couldn't find anything about. I don't think it's anything to do with the iconic soap opera
ATV
Crossroads.
soap. Yeah.
Then on the 3rd of January, there was Never Mind the Quality, Feel the Width.
That was a film that was released?
Yes.
Did you find anything about that?
It's got one of those brilliant. I really love those
cartoony caricature posters.
There we go. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Those 1970s. I love them. But this is the trials and tribulations of a tailor shop partnership owned by a Jewish man and an Irish Catholic man. So I mean, I'm sure all of the comedy in that is absolutely has totally stood the test of time.
I'm sure it's aged brilliantly.
Yeah, sure it's aged
fabulous.
beautiful. Yeah.
Confessions of a Stereotype.
Yeah. On the 13th of January, Behind the Green Door, which is very famous for being one of the first ever porn films released in the cinema.
That's not what I thought it was. Okay, cool.
Wait, did you think it was that song by Shakin' Stevens? Because
I thought maybe that's where that had come from. Didn't realise he was singing about porn all this time.
Yeah. And then on the 14th of January, Play It Again, Sam, the Woody Allen film.
Yeah, okay. It's a film I've actually heard of and seen.
And then 27th of January, Last Tango in Paris.
Ooh, talk about porn films being released.
Could they have ever done a tango advert somehow based around that? I feel like when they were back in the 90s when they were trying to be edgy, surely they could have done sort of tango advert based around that. I don't know what they would do.
I'd say about 6 months ago.
Somebody using a can of tango instead of butter, that sort of thing.
No, I mean, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking about someone literally running around Paris and being relieved when they found the last tango in Paris. Not using it as a lubricant for anal sex like you were thinking. I definitely, in the last 6 months, I've come home quite drunk and watched like a 25-minute long mega mix of all the tango ads that were ever made.
Oh, really?
And that was a very good use of my time.
Isn't it? There's somebody famous involved in it. It's either whoever does the voiceover or whoever is the tango man is actually famous these days, or whoever's slapped. Out of those three things, one of those people is actually famous now.
Yes, there is. I cannot remember because obviously I watched it drunk, but it was one of those things you go like, oh, and then you look at the comments and you're thinking like, oh.
Hang on. Oh, Hugh Dennis. Hugh Dennis does the other voiceover, apart from Ray Wilkins. Oh, and the bloke who does when you've been tangoed.
Yes.
Is Gil Scott Heron.
Oh, that was what it was, and I was gobsmacked. It's like Gil Scott Heron, famous for two things, like incredible songs.
The revolution will be televised,
and tango ads.
When you've been tangoed.
Yeah, brilliant.
I always remember the first time I ever heard of the Taliban. Do you remember Bizarre magazine?
I do. It was like Bizarre magazine.
It was like the gory version of FHM.
Yeah, I was going to say it was the loaded no one wanted to buy.
Yeah, and I remember there was an article about the Taliban in this Bizarre magazine in about 1999 or 2000, something like that.
Okay.
And there was a picture of a man being hung dead from a town square with an axe through his head.
Jesus.
And the editor's caption underneath the photograph was, when you've been Talibangoed.
Oh my God. The amount of times you've said that to me over the last 23 years, and I completely forgot it. Yeah.
That's stuck with me ever since then.
That's not the first time you've told me about that.
Genuinely the first time I ever heard of the Taliban. I mean, they went on to much bigger things after that.
They did. That's why it's so weird watching License to Kill. No, not License to Kill. The Living Daylights.
Yes, yeah.
Which is all about our hero colleagues in the Mujahideen.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Can't go back. Pass to the foreign country, etc., etc. Pop chart, Ross. Pop chart.
Pop chart. So, actually, quite a lot in here that you'll recognise, Mark.
Oh, delightful.
Number 10, Roll Over Beethoven by Electric Light Orchestra. Number 9, Sylvia by Focus. Number 8, Paper Plane by Status Quo. Number 7, Wishing Well by Free. Number 6, I know you like this one, Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool by Little Jimmy Osmond.
He's my favourite of the Osmonds, obviously.
Number 5, Daniel by Elton John. Number 4, You're So Vain by Carly Simon. Number 3, Part of the Union by Straubs. Number 2, I know you're a big fan of this one, Do You Want to Touch Me, Oh Yeah by Gary Glitter.
I do. I don't, Gary, I don't.
Number 1, Blockbuster by The Sweet. No,
prices, Russ, prices.
So what we got here? Here we go. A gallon of petrol, 39 pence. Bottle of whiskey, £2.45. Pint of beer, 18.5 pence. 20 fags, 26.5 pence. Pint of milk, 5.5 pence. They like their half pences then, didn't they?
Yeah, they're obsessed.
Round it up or down. Loaf of bread, 11.5 pence.
Actually, do you know what? Maybe a half pence was rounded up from a quarter pence, though.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Copy of the Daily Mirror, 3 pence. Average house price, £9,000. Can of Coke, 5.5p. Ford Cortina, £1,075.
Yeah.
Golden Wonder crisps, 2.5 pence a packet. And 1 dozen large white eggs, 32p.
Well, that all means nothing to me. Thank you very much, Russ. Argos catalogue.
This was a shocker, Mark.
Not Russell Hobbs. Is that what we're learning here?
This is the first ever Argos catalogue. Argos
Wow.
number 1.
Gosh.
And I went in there. And,
I wonder how much one of those would go in auction.
I went in there, obviously straight to the contents page.
Natch.
And it said kettles. And even on the contents page, it said kettles. And then in big letters, it just said Russell Hobbs on it.
Wow.
Right? I thought, okay, we're in for a treat here.
Yeah.
Turn to the page. Russell Hobbs is only the second most expensive kettle on that page.
Whoa. What's the most expensive?
So the Russell Hobbs was £6.10.
Yeah.
But in swoops, Sona, S-O-N-A. Don't know whether they're trying to cash in on Sony. Not sure.
Yeah.
Never heard of them.
No.
But it's the Sona automatic electric kettle, stainless steel. And this is where I think the money comes in, with a teak handle. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, teak handle.
Okay.
I mean, that's got to bump the price up, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. That seems completely unnecessary.
3-pint capacity.
So the Russell Hobbs was 610.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And this is
£7.45.
£7.45. People made a money.
Yeah.
Teak handle.
Teak handle.
Handle for tea. That's only for the front room, isn't it?
Oh,
You're not going to
so,
use that in the actual. Okay. Magazine covers. We know our new staple.
Yeah.
I'm
So
excited
obviously,
about this.
1973. A lot of the, not necessarily all the same magazines are available. You can't get a copy of Viz in 1973, for example.
Not sure you're trying hard enough for us.
Or New Scientist, in fact. No. So, but Time magazine, it is The Ceasefire, and it has various different pictures of different people doing different things. It's Henry Kissinger shaking a presumably Vietnamese man's hand.
North Vietnamese, I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah, a Vietnamese lady waving a flag in a field, an American catching something outside of an aeroplane, and a woman hugging her son. So I guess this is heralding the end of the Vietnam War.
So this must be post the Paris Accords or whatever, yes. Yep. Okay, all right. Well, not quite the end of the war, just the false dawn.
Scientific American has no headline. It just has a picture of a sphere spraying what appear to be lasers out of it.
Okay.
So they're well on board with the laser train already.
Yeah.
And Private Eye has a picture of Michael Heseltine with the headline, "Would you buy an unused Concorde from this man?" And in smaller letters it says, "If so, apply Michael Heseltine, Minister of Aerospace, Whitehall." And then Michael Heseltine, there's a speech bubble coming out of Michael Heseltine's mouth saying, "And remember, there's a free, genuine, antique-style coffee pot with each one sold."
It's amazing how satire never ages. I totally get that reference.
I think with the headline, that's absolutely fine, Private Eye stuff. The rest of it
makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I think I can get it, but
it takes away from the. I think it takes away from the.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
what it either doubles the humor or halves it.
Private Eye's never been funny though. That it's great investigative journalism.
Yeah, that's why I read it. I read it for like the news, not the. I don't know about you, but I've always skipped over the middle sections.
No, yeah. Well, I always read them and go, "This is shit."
Oh, I don't do that. Unlike you, my time is precious to me.
I'm a completionist. Hang on, obviously, Playboy.
Of course, sorry.
The lady's not named. She's wearing red stockings, and inside the articles are what your sex fantasies mean, the search for super skiing, the town that grows millionaires, and our jazz and pop poll winners.
Oh, okay, brilliant. I'm assuming she's wearing more than just red stockings.
Nope.
Oh, cripes.
She's very cleverly positioned, though, that's all.
Oh, yes, okay. Her legs are occluding her nether regions. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, audit time, Russ.
Right.
Most important invention.
I would say Europort. Europort has gone from strength to strength, continues to be one of the largest and most important ports in Europe, serves the whole of Europe. Does its job perfectly.
I mean, in a different program that was presented the way we would present it, it would be the idea that investing in society to allow everyone equal access to facilities and opportunities would be the right way of doing things. But in this program, it's Europort. The most worthless invention.
That robot-y thing?
Oh, the artwork. God, I was going to say the isocentric chair. Just because I think I'd written off the artwork so heavily that I had almost forgotten it. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
I've just realised what isocentric keeps making me think of. It's John Barnes kicking a can of Lucasade Sport
into a bin. It hit you fast. Yes, absolutely. Of course.
Isocentric chair drink.
Hit you fast. Yeah, that's a really good... Well, no, in a weird way, like... I'm not sure I agree with you. I think the Censter was invented to serve a purpose, and I know I wrote it off, but I think you reveal what it's for. And the fact that it still exists and is working to this day and is celebrated means it has got to be better than the isocentric torture chair.
And, well, considering the timeline as well, because I said the CT scanner, he was already...
Oh, yeah, 6 years away, yeah.
The CT scanner, he was already developing in the 60s, and he had a functioning version in 1972. So, and this is 1973. So, the CT scanner was already...
So, secretly, the future is already hidden
It's
away.
already here. So, this has been invented too late.
Perfect.
So, it's dead on arrival, basically.
DOA. We're agreed then. Most inaccurate prediction of the future.
Covered this mere minutes ago. Rod saying that windmills...
Writing off windmills.
Windmills are obsolete.
Which, in fact, it's the only thing that's going to save us from ourselves. Worst script by a presenter?
Well, there's only one presenter. His pronunciation of X-ray.
Oh, that's very good. I was weirdly thinking, is this the first time Rod has let us down by not script? You're absolutely right. His mispronouncing X-ray. I'll go with that. And not the kind of script he wrote for the village. Best attempt at making something boring interesting.
I think
there's nothing boring in this.
That's the thing. I wonder whether because of our trajectory of watching this, the way we watch this program now is probably so different to when we first started.
Yeah.
I think it's actually quite difficult for us to find anything boring. Boring because we're looking at it in a different way than a normal viewer.
Yeah. Well, we do now. We didn't at the beginning.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not ready to retire just yet, but I'm open to the idea of retiring it. But at the moment, I'm happy to say NA, not applicable. You know, there is nothing boring in this.
No.
It's a really enjoyable episode. Best use of music.
Right, it's that nursery rhyme at the end.
It has to be, doesn't it?
That earworm nursery rhyme, yeah.
It has to be those two ladies, fearfully trying to seduce a robot with nursery. Oh my god, are they here behind me, Russ? Oh my god, oh no, it's my headphones. What a great singer you are. Best or worst use of furniture? I think we might know.
It's the isocentric sports chair.
Best thing we ever did was add the or worst into that particular question. What a horrible thing that is. Do you think they hide the fact that it involves a spinal tap and draining spinal fluid? Do you think they hide that from Rod, or Rod hides it from us? I'm assuming they hide it from Rod.
Imagine if they actually, if you sat in the chair and then they'd strapped you in and then it did it while you were strapped in.
Yeah.
That would be the true horror experience.
Maybe that's why it reminded me of the black hole, because at the end of the black hole, the captain of the ship ends up like tortured forever in hell inside the robot he created. I don't know. Maybe not. Either way, it's the isocentric chair. Most notable clothing. Now, there's a few things here.
Well, I mean, I think as an overall outfit, I think Rod in the first segment, that stripy jacket and
he's got like a woolen, it's almost like a kind of a dressing gown, like a short dressing gown for like a seductive man. It's like that kind of woolen effect. And I say that because it actually has that kind of belt that you can see later on is hanging down, that kind of tie around it. And it's kind of, what was it you say, like dark grey and light grey stripes. And then underneath that, he has a pink polo neck jumper. Yeah. And it is really incredible. Like, it looks fantastic.
Perfect for the weather as well. Perfect for that windswept North Sea destination.
You know what? I don't doubt he's warm. That's the winner. The only thing I just throw up, and I say notable just because it is front and center of a shot, is his leather slip-on shoes. Because it's all we see, and then when you hear that wonderful as his feet go in, but it has to be that original outfit. I totally agree with that. Did we see anything in the episode that made it through to the future? The Netherlands, obviously.
Hetdorp.
Yeah,
as I said, Hetdorp is still there. Europort is still there.
Yeah. Windmills, despite his protestation, made it through. The Censter made it through.
Had a Phoenix-like return only 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah. Plenty.
And the idea, the perverse idea that there might be a better way of handling pigs on their final journey has made it through to the future. What does this episode tell us about the 7th of February 1973?
That foreign countries are still exciting new places to be discovered. Mm-hmm. And
no matter how close they are.
But also there's the sense that the future is a better place. However, the weather
Oh,
It's so bleak.
so bleak. The other thing is it tells us that the prevailing view at the time is that, unfortunately, disabled people were to be pitied and ostracized. Yeah. So anyone who does anything other is cutting edge and progressive.
Oh, and the other thing, Dutch people aren't as blonde.
Not in 1973 they weren't, no.
There's barely a blonde person in this episode.
Yeah.
And mark my words, if I stepped outside this flat now, I'd be surrounded by them. So
Tripping over them.
where have all I don't believe Dutch people are all dyeing their hair. So I don't know. I don't understand why they've all gone blonde suddenly. Is it the better weather? Is it the better
Maybe they were dyeing
weather?
their hair back then, though. Maybe they were all dyeing their hair.
Do you think they were dyeing their hair brunette back then? I don't know.
Of course they were. They didn't want to look like Nazis. It's too fresh. I'm just putting that out there. I've no evidence for that. But no, that was a really good observation, because it was only when I look back, I was like, oh, you're absolutely right. Yeah. No one on the program, except for the fact that they're cycling through a city, no one looks Dutch.
No.
In a way that we would expect. Cool. Okay. Tomorrow's World Tropes. Presenter having to speak over louder sounds.
I was looking for this during the opening section, because he's in a howling gale and he's next to the ferocious North Sea and he's on board of a boat
that is dumping 6-ton boulders.
All of this, and yet he's still perfectly
absolutely
clear as
shocking.
a bell.
Yeah,
can hear him perfectly.
I cannot believe that the audio technology in Tomorrow's World degrades over time. So that, not ticking that.
No.
Stanley Kubrick reference? No. Something to do with oil rigs?
No.
Suspiciously obvious brand name on the ad-free BBC. You can always rely on Coca-Cola.
Yes, yeah. Dimph with a bottle of Coca-Cola.
God bless you, Dimph. Clear and blatant lying littered throughout this episode. the protestation that windmills are redundant technology is a lie. At one point, when Rod is on the island, the new man on the island, he says, "Have you ever been the only person on an island in the North Sea?" Absolutely lying, because there's a camera crew there.
Yeah.
And even if we take him at his word that he's the only man, the idea that camera crew is staffed by women is laughable. He's a liar.
And
there's something else.
And I think we've comprehensively proved that the Sensor robot does not have radar in it.
Utter nonsense. Absolutely. Yeah. Evil farmers, Russ.
Oh! Don't break your iPad, Mark.
I know. I was concerned that the pressure which I'd take that would break my iPad screen. Casual sexism, Russ?
Oh, there we go. It's the segment that keeps on giving.
Ladies love pork. A lab or space filled with darkness and coloured lights? No, we predate that. We predate that kind of... no, we don't know.
That's way out of time.
Dutch angle, Ross. You better believe. Arguably every angle in this, even those on the level, are Dutch angles. Item presented from a gantry.
No,
sadly
I couldn't
not.
see one, no.
Episode ends on a damp squib?
No, I'd say... No, Rod absolutely pulls it...
Absolutely.
Pulls it up with that little end speech there.
It ends on a real note of optimism. Lasers?
Nope.
Magnets?
No.
That's one of our worst...
Absolutely.
TV trope ticking exercises. What a great episode, though. What a genuinely special episode. I have to say, I really enjoyed watching it, even though it made me really frustrated and angry. And I thought it was a cracker.
I have to say, Mark, I mean, when you get frustrated and angry, that's when when you do some of your best stuff, Mark. Let's see.
When I write 1,000 words. Yeah. I'm aware of that. But hey, it made me feel, Russ. Tomorrow's World made me feel. But then I really did enjoy the ending. I really did enjoy that the way he finishes and wraps the whole thing up. That's it though. Episode 20 in the bag.
Brilliant. Well, Mark, I think we're gonna have to wrap this up now, because I've just received a text.
An SMS?
Yeah, I just read an SMS text.
Oh my gosh.
From the site manager of Het Dorp.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, apparently a large family of pigs are trying to move in, and they're absolutely irate about the number of ramps they've got in the village.
Oh my God,
they're
Russ.
demanding they get torn out. So I'm going to have to go down there and mediate this.
Oh my God, you better get down there sharp.
Yeah, so we'll have to leave the episode at that. Yeah,
the last thing we want is that family getting oozy meat.
Yeah, so that's it for this episode.
Russ, there's only 1,480 episodes to go.
Oh yes, of course.
What are we gonna do?
Oh, 1,480. Right, we'll have to start rationing them. Love to see you again, Mark. Hopefully my voice is repaired by next time. And that's just about it, I think. So it's goodbye from me. And if you are on the internet, we will see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.